This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1797, Top 5 What Ifs and or Elseworlds. I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Ian Levinstein.
I'm Chris Eberly.
Oh, yeah. Rocking out here on a Wednesday night recording, and it's time for some top 5 to start off 2021.
Yes.
I'm just happy it's Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. It's been a weird couple of days for us Americans. So it
feels almost like we're living in an alternate reality, doesn't it?
Well, clearly some people are.
Oh, you ain't kidding, sir. You ain't kidding. So what better time than any than to take our minds off of this reality than going a little bit south or a little bit north and doing some what ifs and Elseworlds.
Hear, hear.
Indeed. And before we get there, we do indeed have sponsorship for this episode, and Murd has more.
Yes, sir. Yes, this episode of Comic Geek Speak, as several have been in recent days, is brought to you by our friends at the Collection Drawer Company, who are still celebrating 15 years of making comics collections more accessible. And how do they manage that, you may ask? Why, it's through the courtesy of their primary product, Drawer Boxes, the easy access storage solution. A revolutionary layered design, which consists of an outer reinforced cardboard shell and an inner shell that pulls out of the outer one like a drawer, hence the name. And that's what makes them so much more accessible than your standard top lift drawer, long boxes, because there is no lid to lift off the top. Instead, you just pull that drawer out the front. They're front accessed instead of top accessed, so you can stack those drawer boxes up vertically 5 or 6 boxes high, and you can access the comics in the bottom box in those stacks without having to dismantle the stack, because there's no lid to lift off the top. You just pull that drawer right out the front, and your comics are right there. Easy peasy. It's really revolutionized the way we here at Comic Geek Speak store and access our collections. It's been a godsend. And they're available in a variety of different dimensions for comic books, for magazines, for action figures, for LP records, etc. And let's also not forget the variety of accessories that are available, such as the box sort upright dividers, which prevent the contents of your drawer boxes from falling over as you're pulling that drawer out and pushing it in. And the box locks anchors, which help to stabilize your vertical stacks of drawer boxes so you can stack them up 5 or 6 high without such danger of the whole thing toppling over. And let's not forget the reinforced strength of these boxes. We like to share this little anecdote from our friend Just Bill Hughes, who ran into some water damage, basement flooding issues, which cost him some of his comics in recent months. But thanks to the stability and the strength of the drawer box design, the bottom row of drawer boxes got soaked. The comics in them were lost, but they were strong and sturdy enough that the entire stack of boxes on top of them did not collapse into the water as a result of dissolution and weakening of the cardboard of the drawer boxes on the bottom. So, for strength, for convenience, for accessibility, for ingenuity of design, Collection Drawer Company is the one for you. So go to their website at collectiondrawer.com and see what they can do for you as far as rehousing your comic book collection today.
Yes, indeed. And we very much thank them for their sponsorship. Just about as old as we are. And drawerboxes.com for that. And speaking of us, by the way, we're also sponsored by you. That's right, you listeners. If you head on over to patreon.com/comicgeekspeak, we are currently up to a whopping 80 patrons at $237 per month. So we are over our initial $200 goal, and we thank you so much for that. Every single bit of money that you put towards the Comic Geek Speak Patreon goes towards the show. whether it be server costs, whether it be forum costs, whether it be anything else of the sort.
New equipment, which will be needed soon.
Yes, it will
Yeah.
be. Yes, definitely. Our computers are very old.
Yes.
But yeah, we're definitely keeping it trucking because of you guys, and we very much appreciate that over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. And we thank you very much for all of your support. And we do have one more Patreon to add to that. As I want to mention that, as I recently launched my own Patreon over at patreon.com/comic-timing. And it's not just going towards my side projects, but also towards the cost of producing here at Comic Geek Speak, but also Comic Timing and Comic Timing Extra Points and various other projects. I plan on releasing some quote unquote exclusive podcasts over there that'll eventually make its way onto other feeds. Probably recording next week about Star Trek Discovery Season 3 in depth. And we'll release that onto the Patreon feed and then eventually somewhere else. So patreon.com/comic-timing for my own personal feed if you want to support the producing of the show. So that's all I have.
Majestic shilling all around, gentlemen. Well done.
Yes, indeed. And I am wearing, I don't know if you can really make it out, but I am wearing a
Oh, nice.
appropriate shirt tonight as a Sons of Anarchy Doctor Who themed t-shirt for our wibbly wobbly timey wimey What If Elseworlds and top 5 episode. Figured it made the most sense. Didn't have a slider shirt, so this was as close as I can get.
Oh, I love sliders. Well, at least first few seasons. The last one, that's a little rough, but
I like the last season. Season 4 was trash. Season 5 was a bit of a return to the old.
well, yeah, it could have been. I just didn't care for all the new people that were on season 5 as much, but boy, 1 through 3, fantastic.
You still had Remy. You still had Rembrandt Brown running around.
I know, and I liked him. I loved watching him, and that's why I kept with it till the end. But the first 3 were the best.
Cry like a man. All right.
No, man.
He is running down my face. And
He was great.
So yeah, as with any top 5 episode, our choices could easily change 5 hours from now, or 5 weeks from now, or 5 days from now, or 5 seconds from now. These are our top 5 of the moment. And they're not even necessarily in a 1 through 5 either. They're just 5 choices that we want to mention and that we love.
And they may not necessarily always be what you would consider a what if for an Elseworlds, but they make sense to us.
Well, yeah, I wanted to clarify that because some of the stories I picked are not officially what ifs or Elseworlds.
No,
but
me too.
Clearly not in continuity either.
Right.
So.
So it's the non-continuity / alternate reality is really what we're going for.
And
They don't carry
some
or Elseworlds brand.
some of mine play with reality somewhat.
Well, I cannot wait for us to see "quote unquote" the Shane pick of the top 5, as it's been lovingly called over the years. Because if anybody plays with picks, it is definitely Shane, and I might even be doing the same tonight, quite frankly. So we'll see how that turns out. But we'll go in order as usual. Go around the horn on what our top 5s are, and then we'll go further in depth on what those picks are once we say what our top 5, what our number is in the top 5 list. And we, of course, will begin with numero 5. And Chris, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is Old Man Logan.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Murd, what is your number 5?
What if Volume 1, Number 4? What if the invaders had stayed together after World War II?
Fantastic. Shane, what is your number 5?
Any Star Trek Mirror Universe book. Any.
There it is.
Because, damn it, I love that universe. I love when they talk Mirror Universe.
And my number 5, Superman Speeding Bullets. And I will get more into that as we move forward. All right, Chris, more on your number 5.
So, Ian, first of all, I want to compliment you. This was a great topic. This is your brainchild, and I'm in this in the best possible way. This was quite torturous because there were, as I was, because we actually gave ourselves an extra week to read up and review, and which was really helpful, actually. And I actually tried to reread most of the stories that I selected, and I was able to get in most of them. But as I was going through it, I kept thinking of other stories that also would easily make my top 5. So it was excruciatingly exquisite to try to pare this down. So my compliments, sir. I put Old Man Logan in. Actually, there's 2 reasons why Old Man Logan is in there. One is because I just think it's fantastic, and 2, as I was going through my research, I realized more and more that, at least for me, and I'm saying this as a well-known Marvelite, DC owns this topic as far as I'm concerned. I think they own it, basically. And I was trying to think of what I considered a really good Marvel sort of alternate reality what ifs type story, and I read a lot of the old what ifs or skimmed them. Most of them are really good. They're really fun, but I just don't think they kind of measure up to the really good DC stuff, in my humble opinion. But this book is an exception. I kind of reread / skimmed it because it was coming back as I was going through it today, and I think it's the greatest Wolverine stories ever put to page. The tragedy behind it and the world that they create, this horribly dystopian future where, the villains won. and and how do they win? They just realized, hey, we should all just team up together. And they basically wiped out virtually all of the Marvel heroes. And we're kind of like this Mad Max type, post-apocalyptic world where America's broken, the different sort of fiefdoms run by different villains, and Logan kind of like he reminds of the story of like the Clint Eastwood character from Unforgiven. Like he's hung up the guns or the claws, and he's trying to live a normal life with his family, and it's how he's drawn back in, to the intrigue of that world. And it's for a what if or alternate reality type story. I think it's one of the best Marvel's ever produced. There's tremendous pathos in it. That it really captures the essence of the character. Plus, you have Hawkeye in a Spider-Mobile. So, it's also one of the bloodiest Wolverine stories I've ever read, and that's saying something too.
Oh my God, yeah. And I mean, some of the like dystopian future elements that they bring in Old Man Logan, Mark Miller's known for that sort of stuff, but he doubles down in Old Man Logan.
Yeah, it's friendly warning to people who haven't read this. It's really brutal. I mean, if Wolverine stories are never like you're clutching your pearls type of stories. Like they're often really rough, but there are periods in this book where you just want to back away because you just have no hope. I mean, it's brutal, but it served the story. I don't think it's just there purely for gratuitous purposes.
Yeah, there's some stuff with Hulk and She-Hulk that I really.
Oh man.
But other than that, the McNiven art too.
It's gorgeous.
So outstanding in this, and I co-sign that wholeheartedly. Some of the stuff they've done with Old Man Logan afterwards was a bit shaky, but
those I haven't read. Yeah.
But that's bound to be. I mean, some of it was Jeff Lemire, so it wasn't terrible, but at the same time, just once I'd love Marvel to just leave something be. And DC's just as guilty of this sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Like, something sells and suddenly they want to make 4 of them.
Yeah, Ian, you're in the wrong culture if you want to hold out with that hope.
I know.
Just again, just by closing, that if you're a fan of the character and you've never read this, this is like an essential Wolverine story. I think that's fair to say. And it's really rooted in like westerns and like that post-apocalyptic Mad Max feel. When you mentioned like the Hulk, that's almost like a tip of the hat to Garth Ennis, the way they pursue those characters. It's a classic, and Mark Miller's actually going to appear on my list more than once, at least when it comes to alternates. So he's definitely more top flight when it comes to these type of stories. That's my number 5.
Now, I haven't read it. I say nice pick because I forgot that was a very acclaimed alternate universe thing. Do they use any of that in the last Wolverine movie? What was it? Just Logan?
Yeah, they bits and pieces of it, sure.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's its own thing.
Okay. I would say, to piggyback on Ian's point, maybe the vibe of it in some ways. Yeah, more than actual details from the story. When you read it, you'll see that right away.
Okay.
and a lot of it, Shane, they just frankly couldn't use. Like I mean, as Chris
Huh.
mentioned, there's Hawkeye and a Spider-Mobile, and there's literally 2 properties they couldn't use because of
Yeah.
the Fox movie. So you can't
Right.
use the Spider-Mobile.
Okay.
All right. Next up with your number 5, do your thing. Believe that is Murd. Go ahead, Murd.
I believe so as well. Well, let me first echo Chris's introductory remark that this was a bit excruciating, and that I also agree with him that DC probably does alternate reality stories in general better than Marvel does. And while I think I could easily have done 2 different top 5s here, one just for the Elseworlds and one for the What Ifs. But in the interest of equal time here, I decided I was going to get to my 4 and 5 are Marvel What Ifs, and the top 3 then will consist of DC Elseworlds. And I went with this one. This is from the very early days of what if storytelling at Marvel, when the what if concept was only 4 issues old. It was the brainchild, by and large, of Roy Thomas, and Roy Thomas was also the author of issue number 4, this Invader story. In fact, it's brought to us by the entire, what was then the entire creative team of the Invaders monthly comic. Roy Thomas writing, Frank Robbins on pencils, and Frank Springer as inker. And it's a double-sized issue. And it was actually put in there as kind of a deadline patch because it was supposed to be a Conan story in issue number 4. That couldn't quite make deadline. So Roy had this idea kind of beating around in the back of his brain and decided, hey, let's put out this bonus issue of Invaders, this idea that I've had about what would have happened if Captain America had actually been active in one form or another in the years between World War II and when he returned on the scene in Avengers number 4. And this was an idea that he had actually floated to Steve Englehart during his run on Captain America. And that's how we ended up with the 1950s commie smasher version of Captain America was a different character. It was not, in fact, Steve Rogers, but was a Steve Rogers impersonator who took over the role in the 50s and went a little bit nuts doing it. But Roy Thomas then took it a little bit further by suggesting that maybe there were some other shield bearers who worked with the Invaders to see World War II to its close and a little bit beyond that. And that's where we got the idea that a couple of other patriotic characters in Marvel's stable, one of them an authentic Golden Age character, and the other one a character that Roy himself had created in the Invaders as a doppelganger for Uncle Sam in this freedom fighters knockoff group that he created called the Crusaders. And the knockoff of Uncle Sam in that group was called the Spirit of 76, alias William Naslund. And this story speculates that William Naslund was the first person to pick up the shield for Cap once he and Bucky vanished under mysterious circumstances near the ending days of the war. And it also details the adventure which brought together the rest of the Invaders, Namor, Human Torch, and Toro, Wizard, Miss America, as the All-Winners Squad. And how the first substitute Cap, the Spirit of 76, aka William Naslund, met his end, defeating an android created by the same man who created the Human Torch, Dr. Phineas Horton. And just as a fun little aside, it's kind of a throwaway continuity hint to folks who are paying close attention. If you look closely at this second android, whose name is Adam 2, he has red plastic skin. Which looks kind of like the Vision's skin ultimately looked. So this was Roy Thomas's early attempt, I think, at trying to solve the little continuity gap between how the Vision could possibly have been made from the Human Torch's body, if the Human Torch later on turned up alive and active. So possibly, I think Roy's suggestion was maybe the Vision was actually made of Adam 2's body. But anyway, it's just a cool addition to the legend of Captain America. It introduces the idea that Captain America could be and possibly had all along a legacy, which has been furthered by other writers subsequently. Chris, you'll be happy to know I have begun reading the Brubaker Epting Captain America run of the mid-2000s. Yes, one of my birthday presents this year was the latest trade paperback edition, so I am reading that with gusto. I love it. So I've seen the issue where the mysterious vandal, defaces the graves of William Naslund and Jeff Mace, the first 2 substitute Caps.
Murd, I look forward to your reaction to that, man. Fantastic.
Wonderful stuff. I'm loving it. Yeah, but this is one of my favorite what ifs. because of that, and also because it's one of the earliest what ifs, and yet already Roy is straying from his own formula in that he's showing that what if is not just a showcase for possible alternate realities where things went differently than they did in the established Marvel Universe timeline. He's proved that it can also be a laboratory for in-continuity speculative experimentation. Like this is the first what if story that possibly could have happened in the main Marvel Universe, and very shortly after this story was published, it was basically put on record that, yeah, this is in fact what happened. That the events of this story were not just an alternate reality, they were Earth 616's timeline. This is in fact what happened after Steve Rogers went in the ice and Bucky died. And we ended up with a couple of extra Captain Americas and a new Bucky, and just the legacy of Cap continued on from there.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of the what was it, the 50s Avengers, and how that wasn't really a concept.
You mean these 50s Avengers?
Fantastic. Spoilers.
And let me point out also that, ladies and gentlemen, if you just enjoyed that magnificent recap of the story, go to the latest Time Bubble, where Merds gifts as a critic and as a reviewer are in super heroic display. It's a magnificent episode.
Chris, I am pleased, proud, and thankful to be the beneficiary of such magnificent plugsmanship.
Your office hours are posted, sir. Well done.
I inspired Chris to reread The Dark Knight Strikes Again after nearly 80 years.
That's right.
I may have to go back to that and experience it myself, because I remember my first reaction to it when I read it was, what the hell is this?
Yeah. And I like the first one. I like the third one. The middle one, I got to try that one again.
I haven't even read the third one. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I did like the third one.
I have to read it.
I stayed away from it because I reacted so badly to the second one. But coming back to it with older eyes, I think part of it was just it was crushed beneath the weight of expectations from the first Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But coming
That
back
could
to
be
it,
too.
expecting next to nothing from it, it was actually a lot better than I remembered.
Sure.
Still not great, but better than I remembered.
Job well done there, Murd. And an excellent point with what ifs is how not only can they wind up eventually becoming in canon, but sometimes they can even wind up becoming their own thing, even if they're not in canon, which may very well wind up coming up later, depending on whose list has it, because it may be on mine. I'll just go ahead and hit it. All right, Shane, you're number 5.
So I know it's a cheat. It's every mirror Star Trek story that I could possibly think of. Some of that's reinvigorated with the, what was it, Broken Mirror that IDW put out a few years ago.
Yeah.
Just a fantastic story.
Yep.
Right from the Mirror episode in the original series, I was hooked. I would have loved to have seen a movie with this or a Next Generation episode. I don't want to spoil things for other properties as they continued, but I loved what they've done with Mirror Universe across the board in any medium. To bring it into comics, it almost seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm actually surprised there's not more of them on a more consistent basis, because I enjoy the heck out of taking characters we know and twisting it a little bit to suit a story that's taken place in the Mirror Universe or a Mirror Universe. I just think it's fantastic. I think if you love Star Trek and you like that as an aspect of it, and you've never read the comics, I think seek them out and give them a try. No matter what one it is, I've enjoyed them in some capacity. And these latest rounds, these latest issues from IDW in recent years, they've just been out of the park fantastic.
Yeah, I second Shane's sentiment there that the IDW stuff is superb. I mean, if you love Star Trek and especially those mirror stories, the stuff they did with the narration characters is classic Star Trek comics. It's superb.
What was that one shot with Khan? Gosh, what was that called? That I forgot
that
to
was
get that.
excellent too. That was by I think it was J.M. DeMatteis wrote that, I think.
And it could be. The only problem with it was I thought it could be longer. I thought it needed a few
great.
issues. Yep. I thought it was so well done, but I felt like they rushed it. I would have liked a little bit more of that story
I agree.
out there.
It was excellent.
Yeah, the Mirror Universe has always fascinated me. I think the elements that they've implemented in Discovery, for example, has been excellent.
Oh yeah.
But even before then, the Deep Space Nine stuff. And
the novel, what was it, Dark Mirror or something? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and there also there's a Star Trek mobile game that I play that is essentially almost like like I wouldn't quite say it's like a card game, but like you're collecting every version of a character you can possibly have, and then having them be a part of your Star Trek crew, and you battle other crews and so on and so forth. And they have designs for Voyager mirror image,
Oh, wow.
some of which are crazy, like Janeway as a pirate, pretty much.
Nice.
That I would love to see more of in comic form or somewhere else. It's really well done stuff.
I love what they did with Deep Space Nine, and like you said, I love what's on Discovery. I just think these comics, again, the ones from IDW especially, they've just been well done, written, well done art. It's just a great package. It's a lot of fun to read.
Yep. Well, speaking of JMD Mateus, once again, my number 5 here is Superman Speeding Bullets by the one and only JMD Mateus, with art by Eduardo Barreto. And one of my favorite episodes of Superman the Animated Series is the one where he has to go undercover as Batman, as Batman has gone missing.
Yeah.
And you get to see what Superman would be like in the cowl. And it's he's trying to be Batman, but clearly it's different because, well, for one thing, he's bulletproof.
Yeah.
That's going to immediately change the aspect and personality of the person behind the cape, and also he's less quote unquote damaged than Bruce. This is a little bit different than that, but at the same time, still reminds me of that in certain ways. This is an Elseworlds tale where, rather than being found by Jonathan and Martha Kent, Superman's craft from Krypton is found by the Waynes, and he is raised as their son. And when they die, he swears vengeance and decides to become Batman, because that's the way it turns out. And you get to see a very different take on the Superman character than we've ever really seen before. One that's a little bit more broody and dangerous, while at the same time his rogues gallery is a excellent combination of Batman and Superman rogues. By the time the issue, the series is over, you get this sort of like amalgam of Lex Luthor and Joker, which is incredibly creepy, and beautifully drafted as well by the art. And really you get this idea that just how dangerous it is if the Joker had the funds to essentially take over with his insanity. Like, I can't even imagine what that would be like. And that's a picture that's painted here. But you also see the eventual, quote unquote redemption of the character, and meeting Lois and changing his mind on things a little bit. And by the time it's all said and done, you do get a little bit more of a traditional version of Superman, and a change of heart. But it's still different enough where I love the yarn that's crafted, and I enjoyed it as a kid, and I enjoyed it just as much flipping back through it to prep for this episode. So that's why Superman Speeding Bullets is my number 5.
Yeah, and that's really significant that a book you loved as a kid still resonates for you as an adult.
Yeah,
That often doesn't happen. So
Yeah, I know.
It's a phrase.
It was one I remember. It was one of the first trades that I remember getting from Walden Books.
Walden Books.
Yep.
Wow.
There was a Walden Books in Kings Plaza that I remember getting my Return of Superman from. I remember getting my Superman Bizarro World from, and I remember getting this Speeding Bullets from as well. And I loved it. So yeah,
And now I want to go back to B. Dalton too.
I was just gonna say B. Daltons. God, those were the days. So, total sidebar. I was just watching on YouTube last night a video of, it was a CBS special of old, well, it would be old now, of a mall when malls were first coming about, and it was oh my God, I can't remember his name. But anyway, it was a CBS special, and they're going through the mall, following the life of the mall in a day, and people working in it, and the guy running it. Fantastic watch. It's like an hour long.
Oh my God.
The stores.
a couple of days ago, I actually did something similar, a little bit more recent than that. I miss travel so much that I just put on 4K video of Tokyo.
Oh
And
yeah, I've done that.
yeah,
Just watch them walk around the city.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
absolutely. Yep.
I know on my desk just the other day, I had old gift cards. I keep certain old gift cards. Why, I don't know. Mostly because they have superhero related. And I want to say a Walden Books Superman gift card and a Borders Wonder Woman gift card that I kept. And if I had them where they were 2 days ago or so, I could have pulled them up. But
Boy,
yeah, I keep crap
I
like that.
still have my Blockbuster card.
I do have that somewhere. Yeah.
All right, let's head up to our number 4s. And Shane, go ahead and start us off.
Let's see. I'm going to say Booster Gold Series issues 7 through 10.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Chris, you're number 4.
All-Star Superman.
Ooh,
Oh, that's a good one.
well done. My number 4, going to the world of What If. What If Volume 2, number 23. What if the all-new, all-different X-Men had never existed?
Oh,
And Merge, your number 4.
Well, as foreshadowed earlier, what if Volume 1, Number 9? What if the Avengers had fought evil during the 1950s?
Fantastic. All right, Shane, go ahead.
All right, so it's collected in this hardback blue and gold, and it features Booster going back and grabbing Beetle to help with something, a disaster, whatever. And they end up traveling through an alternate reality where the Justice League International are all kind of different. Most of them are dying or dead. They're battling Maxwell Lord. They have the Brother Eyes. Was that what the robots were called?
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they were called.
No, the satellite controlling them was Brother Eye.
Brother Eye. What would
Omax.
Omax? That's
Oh,
it.
that's
Thank you.
right.
Ah,
Yep. Okay.
geez. And it follows a story which at this time, spoilers, Blue Beetle's dead. And it follows a story of Booster and Beetle having one more adventure together. It's to me in places it's heartwarming. The art's great. I actually own a page from it, which I love. So yeah, my love of these two characters and the way this series would quantum leap around the DC universe, fixing things. When this came across, they were pulling in Blue Beetle. This was a hit right for me right from the start. Absolutely love this. I think it also includes issue 0 in the storyline too. I'd have to check that, but it's a fantastically fun story. If you love these characters, it's a great way to revisit them in a more modern way. Totally doesn't need to be there because it's Booster Gold traveling through time and pulling people in and out of existence. In the end, of course, Blue Beetle can't stay, and that's heart-wrenching to me, but it's a fantastic story.
Shane, what was the Justice League series?
That's coming.
Oh, okay.
If it's what I'm thinking of, it's inside of a series. It's a few issues in a series, or is it a separate mini?
We'll clarify it later. I don't want to
Okay.
steal your thunder.
All right.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's just going to be this episode. Oh, wait, no. We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
We're spoiling ourselves.
Nice. All right, Chris.
That was really bad. I wanted to sit down and reread these. I didn't get the chance to reread them like Chris did. I wish I could have had the time to do that, but
yeah, I got a chance to reread some things, but not nearly as many as I would have liked. But I even got to read some new things, and that's actually my number 4 on this one. Which
wow.
This. All right, Chris.
So when I was compiling my list, and I hadn't thought of this initially, and I went back to it, I said, wait a minute. How can you not include possibly one of the greatest Superman stories ever put to page? That's, an alternate reality or like a one-shot alternate reality in this list. And I revisited it, and I almost forgot how moving this story is. I think in many ways it captures just the essence of Superman, especially so much of the feel of like Silver Age Superman in terms of a lot of the trappings of the story and the situations and different little Easter eggs they throw in there. The Frank Quitely art is absolutely majestic and perfectly captures, the feel of the character. And, it's Grant Morrison, I think, doing one of the great takes on the concept of Superman. And, I don't want to spoil too much, but the basic gist of the story is that Superman finds out he's dying and he has a year to live. And that's what he does in that time. And if you love the Superman concept, if you love, a lot of the great, like I said, sort of trappings of the Silver Age Superman, or, like the solitude and robots and all these types of different characteristics kind of thrown in with like, the Morrisonian twist and some more modern sentiments as well. And if you haven't read this, you really need to. I remember when this came out and I read through it. I mean, there's pathos, but because it's Superman, inevitably there's also hope. And the ending of it is, I think, almost pitch perfect. The way the story ends, and this is, they did an animated movie of it as well, actually.
I thought they did a good job with that as well.
Which I also enjoyed. Obviously it was a bridge compared to the comic book, but I thought that was well done also. But this still, for me, is probably my favorite Superman story that I've ever read.
Oh, wow.
The animated movie was one of the last things Dwayne McDuffie worked on.
Okay.
And I remember actually getting to see the screening of that at the Paley Center here in New York, and Dwayne was one of the guests, and it was one of his last public appearances.
Oh, wow.
And it was, I loved what I got to see. It was an excellently rendered version of it. I think the series is definitely better because it has more time to flesh it out. But it was a great crossover version of it. Yeah.
And also, if you're a fan of Lex Luthor, you also really need to read this story, because the way they kind of explore what drives him and his dynamic with Superman, it's also really well done. And it kind of gets you to look at it in a bit of a different way. So to me, this is a masterpiece, essentially.
My favorite version of Lex Luthor is one that is too pompous to even consider Clark Kent to be Superman. And that happens multiple times in this All-Star Superman, where, even though it's staring him right in the face, he can't admit it. Nope. Because he can't admit that he'd been wrong for as long as he was. He can put two and two together that someone this bumbling could also be his biggest adversary.
And we should also mention, in case listeners aren't familiar with the title, is that DC briefly tried this approach where they had the All-Star banner, and it was meant to be stories outside of continuity with some of their iconic characters. Did the Batman
creators and iconic creators?
Yeah, that's right. And did the Batman series ever finish?
No, it did not. In fact,
no.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
The artwork I loved. The story, I did not like.
Although it does have my favorite, Batman line of all time. What was it? Are you blind? Are you retarded? I'm the goddamn Batman, or something like that. It's it's so stupid. And Batman painting himself entirely yellow to battle Green Lantern.
What, did they just do Batman and Superman? I mean, was that it? Was this just the two for All-Star?
Yeah, there wasn't there a Wonder Woman as well?
There was going to be a Wonder Woman. It never wound up materializing. I believe it was going to be Jeff Johns and who's the guy who mainly only ever does covers?
Adam Hughes.
Adam Hughes was supposed to be the artist on it. Yeah, and it there's even some pages sitting in a drawer at DC. It just never materialized. It never became a thing.
Yeah. And then the Earth One line of graphic novels basically took over.
Right. Yeah.
Which they're not on my top 5, but I love those graphic novels. I've liked every one of them I've read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that absolutely. Yep. All right, so I went with a What If from Volume 2, and slight rant before I even get into this What If. Marvel, step up your game on getting What If digital, because there is such a hole in the digital copies of Volume 2, specifically of What If. There's just a scattershot of issues. That's it. I'd say of the like over 100 issues of this volume of What If, I'd say there's maybe 15 of them that are available either on Comixology or on Comixology Unlimited. And they just never got around to it. Like ones that that are on my honorable mentions that I remember reading as a kid are completely missing from there. And it's disappointing to me because they have all of the first volume. They just have very little of the second volume, and that's the newer one. So like you'd think it would be easier accessible to them. So step up your game, Marvel. Come on.
I love when Levinstein gets wrathful. Fantastic.
But one of the ones that happened to be on the app was a big surprise for me. As listen to this creative team: Kurt Busiek on writing and Rodney Ramos on art.
Wow.
Yeah, one of the best inkers in the business on straight pencils for this issue. And it's what if the all new, all different X-Men had never existed? And this is the type of self-contained story that paints a alternate reality in a way that I love, because literally everything goes right for the X-Men. It would have never made a compelling story outside of it, because everything that could have went wrong didn't. They find their way off of Krakoa. Because of that, they have the original team, including Havoc and Polaris, when they're on the spaceship that eventually leads to Phoenix. Rather than Jean having to pilot it, they're able to use Polaris's magnetic abilities to shield the ship, and therefore no one becomes Phoenix, and they avoid that issue. At one point, a bunch of the all new, all different X-Men wind up getting swindled by the alien version of Eric the Red and wind up becoming quote unquote villains. So you have Nightcrawler and Thunderbird and I believe Banshee, if I remember correctly, attacking the team until it's revealed that they were all being manipulated, and that it's not really. And Nightcrawler is like the big one who swears revenge on them, which then winds up coming on later on in the story as Nightcrawler with his his teleportation abilities was able to secretly watch the X-Men for months and learn that they're not bad guys and that he made a huge mistake. And rather than attack them like he threatened to do earlier on in the issue, he actually winds up sacrificing himself because the Phoenix entity is still out there. And the rather than have the X-Men have to deal with it themselves, Nightcrawler is the one who sacrifices himself, and in the process teleports the Phoenix out of our realm, sacrificing himself in the process.
Oh wow.
And there's no more Phoenix, and they all live happily ever after. And again, would never make a compelling comic outside of a What If, but if anyone's going to be able to pull it off, it is Kurt Busiek.
Oh yeah.
It's classic in style. Rodney Ramos has that, Claremont era X-Men feel to the artwork, and it's beautifully done. And I was so pleasantly surprised with this issue that I had to put it on my list somewhere. And that's why it makes it onto my list at number 4.
And you can always count on the What Ifs for often dramatic deaths of beloved characters.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Sometimes all of them, depending on. But really, really enjoyed that. Oh, and at one point, Colossus is also a villain. I forget what corny name they gave him, but he's even wearing like a mask on top of his metal skin for no reason, because that's that type of thing you get out of a villain. On a related
curtain, maybe, or
something. It was pretty close to that, Bert.
Or the proletarian.
Did any of you guys know, and it didn't make my list because I haven't read any of it, and it's not even technically a Marvel comic. Did any of you guys know that John Byrne has essentially been writing fan fiction for the last 18 issues and for at least like 5 years now of a fully drawn X-Men comic that paints an alternate version of the X-Men after issue 136?
No.
It is fully penciled and lettered in a very rudimentary style, but it is apparently available on John Byrne's message board. He has there are 18 issues written by John Byrne and drawn by John Byrne of essentially what his X-Men would have been had Jean never died in the Phoenix Saga.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's getting into copyright trouble?
He apparently he's getting by not charging for it, I guess. And
Okay.
fan fiction. There was talk of Marvel possibly publishing it at one point, but from what I've heard, and this could easily be not true, but knowing John Byrne, it probably is true. He was offered for it to be published, and because they wouldn't let him finish the Hidden Years, he said no thanks.
Man does know how to hold a grudge.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's just a fan fiction and probably will be for the foreseeable future. But
Wow.
18 freaking issues out there of an alternate
Wow.
timeline X-Men that's not at all published by Marvel.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, me too.
That's up tonight, Ian.
Yeah,
All, all this alternate reality Byrne X-Men and also a Kurt Busiek script I didn't even know existed.
I try, sir. I try.
Yes, quality food for thought. Thank you very much.
Yep. And speaking of quality food for thought, how about them 50s Avengers?
Yeah, how about them? All right. So here it is. It's another Roy Thomas brainchild here. What if the Avengers had fought evil during the 50s? What if Volume 1, Number 9? Although Roy Thomas, he only provided the basic concept. The creative team is actually Roy Thomas's understudy of the time, and this was published in June of 1978. And Don Glutt had taken over scripting a bunch of later issues of The Invaders for Roy Thomas by then. The art is by Alan Kupperberg and Bill Black. And the framing sequence, it's not just Uatu the Watcher introducing this story. He's there, but he's kind of introducing a team of what was at that time present-day Avengers, also introducing the story. The story is Iron Man, Thor, Vision, Cap, and the Beast watching this whole thing on a monitor, kind of like Professor Farnsworth's What If machine. Being longer not included. So
that's what happened with future
what life would be like if I'd invented
the thing longer.
A man can dream.
I love that episode.
Bad news, nobody. Okay.
Tales of interest. This tale of interest takes us right back to the fabulous 50s, which, since this was published in 1978, was prime nostalgia material.
Yeah.
The late 70s did love themselves some 50s culture. And it reveals a what-if story involving an idea that Roy Thomas had had of reviving a bunch of Marvel/Atlas publishing comic book characters. Most of them authentic 1950s characters, most notably Marvel Boy, Bob Grayson, the original Marvel Boy, and Venus, Goddess of Love, and a couple of other more obscure numbers, Gorilla Man and the Human Robot, both of which I think had only had like one appearance in like horror fantasy titles that Atlas was publishing in those days, and one Ringer who was not an authentic 50s character at all, but a product of Roy Thomas's imagination, intended to tap into the same 50s nostalgia vibe that inspired this whole issue, namely 3D Man. And I will have more to say about 3D Man at a later time. A little more foreshadowing for you folks. But it's a story of FBI agent Jimmy Woo, who is also an authentic 50s Marvel character.
Yes. Yep.
Just an early example of an Asian American finding his way into comics in print, who assembles this team of 50s who name themselves the Avengers, I might add. He does give them the idea. To track down Jimmy Woo's nemesis, Fu Manchu knockoff and living Asian stereotype that walks, the Yellow Claw. Yes, so also an authentic 50s character who actually had his own title back in the 50s. And so it's just kind of getting the team together, all these characters who then have to team up to fight a bunch of authentic 50s villains, with one holdout also from the 70s, Skullface, the Great Video, Electro, the Soviet electric assassin, and an enemy of 3D Man, the Cold Warrior. So it's a lot of nostalgia for the era from which these characters came. And it kind of ends with a nod and a wink to the audience that maybe this did happen, and in some way, shape, or form. And it was just kept secret. And it's like issue, and you started to say this earlier, Ian, like issue number 4 of Volume 1, What If, this is a what if that might have possibly come to pass and been incorporated into canon. It never quite got that far, and it was definitively excised from regular Marvel continuity, identified as an alternate reality, and destroyed. It was eliminated as an alternate reality in one fell swoop during the Avengers Forever maxi series by Kurt Busiek.
Right. Yep.
Which also was Busiek's own way of solving the Human Torch / Vision conundrum.
Mhm.
Also hinted at in What If Volume 1, number 4. So I still think of one of my favorite covers of all time, actually, is the variant cover that Frank Quitely did for whichever issue of Avengers Forever featured the 1950s Avengers, who were introduced.
And we should remind listeners that we did a 2-part review of Avengers Forever. I think under the Book of the Month banner.
It was. I guess starring, I believe, Danny O'Brien and Bill Ellis.
I think so, yeah.
Yep. And so the 50s Avengers did actually find their way into 616 Marvel continuity in time in the form of the team known as the Agents of Atlas, brought to us by Jeff Parker and friends, which did not unfortunately include 3D Man. Although they did meet the new 3D Man, Delroy Garrett Jr., a.k.a. Triathlon, who eventually, sometime around the time of the Secret Invasion, became the new 3D Man because one of the 3D Man's powers was the ability to see Skrulls through their disguises. And the Secret Invasion involved Skrulls a little bit, you know.
Just that much, yeah.
The Agents of Atlas was great fun for me because it reintroduced all the characters that I first met in this wonderful 70s / 50s nostalgic issue. And there were also a few other 50s cameos thrown in for good measure in this issue. Namora, for example, the cousin and adventuring partner of Namor from the 50s, and Jan of the Jungle, who appeared in some 50s adventures as well. So yes, it's just kind of a nifty 50s palooza here. It's one of the first issues of What If I ever owned, I believe. So certainly, it might be the very first issue of What If Volume 1 I ever owned. And I don't know how exactly I became aware of the existence of the 50s Avengers, probably through Wizard magazine, but it was a historical curiosity I just had to have, and it's one of the jewels of my collection even now.
Absolutely, yeah, yep. And I'm a huge fan of Agents of Atlas. I'd never read that original What If, but it is now officially on my pile. As I will be checking that out on the Unlimited app when I get a chance.
All right.
Okay, over to our number 3s, and I will start us off, as I believe my number 3 is Amalgam Comics.
Oh,
That's a good one.
Good one.
Damn, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, really good one.
All right, Shane, you're number 3.
Oh, I hemmed and hawed and keep changing it. I'm going to go with Marvel's Future Imperfect.
Okay. Adam.
Superman and Batman, World's Funnest.
Oh, so good.
Yes. And Chris.
Kingdom Come.
Excellent. Glad you mentioned it, so I get to mention something else.
Yeah, I can do that too now.
That was actually originally possibly going to be my number 1. So that's
Ian Pooh, you can still talk about it.
I had that at my number 2.
yeah.
I didn't bother to rank it because I knew at least one of the rest of you would do it. So
Yeah.
And no, not a problem at all, Chris. I have alternates that I will gladly mention, but yeah, it's we'll get to it when we get to it. All right, so Amalgam, yet another thing from my youth that completely floored me when it happened. It was crazy enough that we had more, Marvel versus DC as a concept, and that they fought each other. That you were able to vote on who the winners were. A lot of the votes were ridiculous and stupid, but that's beside the point. Nothing we can do about that. But after an issue of that, the second to last issue, number 3, the universes merged for a short. And because of that, we got one of the kookiest experiments that Marvel and DC ever put out, with some of their best creators, I might add. Like you had some top-notch talent working on these combined characters. Amazon, for instance, written and drawn by John Byrne, featuring essentially a what if Aurora had become Wonder Woman, and she's the main character of the Amazon series. So you've got Storm as Wonder Woman there. Assassins with art by Scott McDaniel, written by Dan Chichester. Doctor Strange Fate, Ron Mars with art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. You had Super Soldier, written by Mark Waid and illustrated by frickin' Dave Gibbons.
Yep.
I mean, come on.
Wasn't there a Howard the Duck amalgam?
There was, yes.
Lobo the Duck.
Yes. That was part of Wave 2.
Okay.
That was when the Axis event was going on, where they, yet again had a merger of the universes, and you got more, out of that. And that was written by Alan Grant with art by Val Zemeckis.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep. But you had Chris Priest on JLX Unleashed with art by Oscar Jimenez. My favorite, Dark Claw Adventure.
Yeah. That was my favorite too.
Which was totally like it. Dark Claw is crazy enough already because it's Logan and Batman combined into the same character.
Yeah.
But written by Ty Templeton and Rich Burchett on art, and it's an animated series adventure.
Yep.
So cool. The concepts are great. You actually finally get the Fantastic Four merging with the Challengers of the Unknown to become the Challengers of the Fantastic. You get Spider-Boy, which was Superboy and Spider-Man combining into one character. The Magnetic Men featuring Magneto, which was a freaking Tom Pyre on writing with Barry Kitson on art. I mean, and Busiek wrote Iron Lantern,
Which was my favorite.
That was my favorite as well. Yeah, Iron Lantern #1 by Kurt Busiek with art by Paul Smith. Followed shortly thereafter by Thor Ryan of the New Asgods, written by Keith Giffen with art by John Romita Jr. It could have easily been stupid. The entire concept could have been ridiculous, and everything could have been, also rans that didn't make any sense. But they made their one-shots work. And by establishing them in quote unquote existing continuity as well, by having them essentially be like issue 106 of like the series, even if they were called #1s, like they would have, boxes in the corner referencing old issues of series that didn't actually exist, and letters columns that were written for previous issues in the series. It was so much fun, and the concept just really, really worked. And I have all 4 collections sitting on my shelf from both runs, and I love them.
Was that classified as a 5th week event back then?
I guess, because it's not like they stopped publishing, Marvel and DC comics. So I would assume it was a 5th week event. Yeah, but
that was definitely a high point.
Oh my God, absolutely. Yep.
And the existence of the Access character made me hopeful that this would be an ongoing thing.
Yep.
Maybe there would be at least like a wave or a batch of amalgam one-shots once per year.
Yep.
If not a monthly series, but yeah.
I really thought they would have continued for a little while at least.
Yeah, I think once the upper brass of DC changed, they no longer had an interest in it. I mean, we certainly got 2 years of it, which is more than I ever thought we would.
Yeah.
But
the upper brass at Marvel was to blame too, because I can remember Joey DeQ specifically saying, and I quote, "The days of amalgam sucked."
Oh.
Well, forget you, Joey Q, because I very much do not agree with that. I think it was an excellent experiment.
Agreed wholeheartedly.
Yep. So that's why that becomes my #3.
And some of that could have been worse if they continued and just kept introducing new characters, but what they established, I wanted to see those characters continue a little bit. I didn't necessarily need a new wave every so often of just new amalgams. I wanted to see out of the 2 waves that they created where they went.
Oh yeah.
Quarterly amalgam unlimited, maybe. That was a big thing in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
I would have been down for that. Sure. It's just the only problem is that both publications have to continue to play nice and.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Shane, you're number 3.
Future Imperfect. So back when this came out, I read probably Amazing Spider-Man and maybe some of the X-Men. That would have been about it for Marvel for me. What interested me was I think it was some guy at the comic store I was going to at the time. I want to say it was in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, and saying it's an alternate reality tale. And I picked it up from that. And I loved it. I loved the art. I loved it was written by oh my God. Now I want to say John Byrne, but that's not right.
Peter David.
Peter David. Oh God. I loved all the little Easter eggs that they put in what seemed like every panel. I would scour over issue 1, especially trying to find little hidden Easter eggs of different things in the Marvel universe. Fun tale of a present day Hulk getting flung to the future and seeing himself become evil. And I don't want to say hilarity ensues because that's not it, but such a great story in 2 issues that then spawned was it a sequel or?
Well, right now the Maestro miniseries is coming
the
out.
Maestro, yeah, but there was another one with the Hulk, the end, where the Maestro came back, I think, written by Peter David at some point.
I don't know if that was quite the Maestro because Hulk was with Dale Keown on art again, but I think that's just more a last story of the Hulk. He's literally living.
I couldn't quite remember if that played into it or not, but the 2 issues of Future Imperfect are just fantastic alternate reality tale of the Hulk. And again, back then, Hulk was not my favorite character in the world. I mean, to a certain extent, he still isn't. I myself have never read an awesome Hulk run that I love, but just me, I gravitated towards Spider-Man and X-Men more. But that story that grabbed me, those 2 issues.
Shane, have you given Peter David's run on the main Hulk title a try?
I really didn't. No. And because of Future Imperfect, that's something that I should go do.
His run on Hulk is a classic. I mean, I can't recommend it enough.
But it's a great story. If you like Hulk, you like alternate tales, definitely get this one in. And even if you just like picking out Easter egg stuff, man, there's a ton to go through in there, especially his trophy room. The Maestro's trophy room is just fantastic.
Are you reading the Maestro series, which is a prologue?
No,
Very good.
I'll read it on the Marvel app, but no, I didn't order it or anything like that.
One of the reasons, and I just remembered this, Shane, I think one of the reasons why you thought The End and Future Imperfect were related is because they published them together as a trade a couple times.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, that could be.
To pad out the Hulk The End trade, they combined two into a trade, even though neither one of them has really anything to do with the other.
And I'm pretty sure I bought the issue of The End off the shelf and read that separately, and maybe I'm sure that's probably it.
Yeah, I definitely bought The End off the shelf and read Future Imperfect in a very, very small bound copy, and then eventually they wound up combining them into a larger trade.
Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, I love it. The art's great, the story's great. Definitely, if you've never read it, pick it up.
Yep, and Rick Jones also is a huge part.
Oh, right, yeah.
And a lot of the history of Rick Jones in Future Imperfect winds up in some ways playing into his Captain Marvel time as well. That Peter.
Yeah, David. I mean, he didn't create Rick Jones, but Peter David owns that character, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
God, I keep thinking of things that I forgot about. So I keep writing down so I don't forget them.
Shane always gets exasperated when we do top fives.
Right, because I think, all right, I've got this nice little list of 10 or 15, I'm good. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot.
Murd, go ahead.
Okay. Come along with me to the 5th dimension, gentle friends. Yes. Superman and Batman, World's Funnest. Now, we did a footnotes episode on CGS about this.
Wow.
Yeah, this is going back to right around April Fool's Day of 2012. And we just went through this one-shot, page by page, panel by panel, picking about all the DC multiverse goodness that had been strewn throughout. And it was, I think, 64 pages square bound. And it was all written by Evan Dorkin. What a wicked sense of humor he has. With art by just a whole bunch of different, really talented folks. The premise was Mixus Pitlick, it begins at the ending of a typical Silver Age World's Finest Superman and Batman story as they're leading away like Luthor and the Joker or Clayface or something in handcuffs. And then Mixus Pitlick shows up on the scene to make mischief, and Batmite shows up simultaneously to watch his hero Batman triumph. And the two of them end up getting into a very fanish argument over whose hero was the best. And soon that just turns into a knockdown, drag-out, interdimensional imbroglio of the two of them just casting magic spell after magic spell at each other. And they wander through a whole bunch of different... Talk about your alternate reality stories. This features as many alternate realities in the DC canon that could be fit underneath the Brian Boland cover of this one-shot. And so just heaven help all the different hapless DC universe and all DC multiverse characters that run afoul of these two imps as they wheel on each other. And each, like every 2 pages as they stumble into a different reality, suddenly the art changes to the style of a different guest artist. So we've got Dave Gibbons, we've got Mike Allred, we've got Shelley Moldoff, we've got Frank Miller, of all people, Doug Monkey, Phil Jimenez, Ty Templeton, Stephen DeStefano of Amazing Man fame, Scott Shaw of Captain Carrot fame, Jaime Hernandez, Stuart Immonen, and of course, let's not forget Alex Ross. You know, they actually have a little Kingdom Come sequence in the middle of all this mayhem that they're going through. So yeah, and the whole thing kind of ends back where it began with a big fat wink to the audience, and it is a riot. If you've never read this story, by all means track it down. It's called Superman and Batman World's Funnest, and it really lives up to its name. And as you're reading it, well, why not seek out that footnotes episode I mentioned, just for a little bit of reader guidance.
Yep. And that footnotes episode, as you said, Murd, was released on April 4th, 2012, featuring yourself, Pants, and guest star Bruce McIntosh.
Yeah, his forum name was Bruce in Colorado, for you forum veterans out there.
All right, excellent. And Kingdom Come was mentioned, so Kingdom Come must be said.
So Murd inspired me for this selection because I was thinking about, all right, what am I going to put on this list? And I had just listened to the part of his time bubble where he was talking about DK2 and how he hadn't read it since it came out. And I hadn't either. And I realized I hadn't read Kingdom Come since it first premiered, which was what, the late 90s?
96, I believe.
Yeah. So I was like, my God, I haven't read the story since that time. And I know it's considered a classic, like sort of like the alternate reality mode. So let me read it again and see if I want to put it on my list. So I read it today. Yesterday and today. And it lived up to like sort of the hype in my memory and what, just what you see around you when you read testimonials. It actually deeply moved me because, for one thing, with what's going on in our country right now, it made me think, what if Superman existed in our world? And what role would he be playing right now in this current dumpster fire? So, sorry guys, I won't get any more political than that. But Kingdom Come is first. I mean, obviously, let's start with the easy part. The Alex Ross art is arguably the greatest work of his career.
Breathtaking.
It's because I hadn't looked at this book in a couple decades, really. I mean, you see art in different areas, in other books, or when we went to the Alex Ross exhibit in Pittsburgh some years back, stuff like that. But I hadn't looked at that whole story in a couple decades. And as Shane said, it's so breathtaking. Like his Captain Marvel alone is, in the modern sense, probably the definitive of the character. I mean, talk about capturing the essence of a character.
Yeah.
There's a model for Captain Marvel, Chris?
I do.
Is it Uncle Sal?
It's Uncle Sal.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that after all these years, we know that. That just thrills me to no end.
So the art, I was just, my mouth was just perpetually agape as I was going through the story. And that's sort of the easy part of the review. The story itself really struck me because, Wade and Ross are tackling a really challenging theme, which is, and it's something that other creators have tackled their own way over throughout the history of the medium, which is, how would humanity really deal with these metahumans, as they're often called in the story, who are basically akin to gods? And what does that mean for the place of humanity on Earth when you have beings who essentially now transcend humanity? And it plays some of the classic archetypes, like the ongoing tension between Batman and Superman, and what that means in this future. What role the remaining villains are playing. But the two parts of the book that are most compelling to me are, one, how the book portrays Wonder Woman, which is really interesting because, again, a lot of the story is really about the effects of disillusionment and that sort of that when ideals clash with, sort of the sordid realities of countries and humanity and just sin and what people are, failings and weaknesses of people, both superpowered and normal. And seeing the Wonder Woman character struggle with her new role as more as like a hard-bitten, warrior who's been, cast out of Paradise Island for failing in her mission to be an ambassador of peace.
And not only cast out, she's dethroned, isn't she?
Yeah. Yep, he's exiled. Yep, and dethroned. And then, of course, Superman, who refuses to be referred to as Clark. He only would go by Kal-El.
Yeah.
And the trauma he's dealing with because of what happened with Lois, the Daily Planet, and just, the notion of like the next generation and how this is something you see in regular life. Like the next generation is often impatient with what they see as like the old-fashioned approach of the generation that came before. And of course, that takes much greater and more ominous resonance when you're talking about superpowered beings who have basically the fate of humanity in their hands, and how they go about dealing with each other and human beings are kind of almost in the crossfire in this history. But the way Superman is portrayed and his struggles with, how can he still live up to his ideals in this new world, and he tries to apply those ideals in a world that really isn't very receptive to them, and in a way causes him to kind of almost lose himself for much of the story. Man, this book definitely lives up to sort of its august level, because again, I haven't read it in so long, and it resonated with me more than ever before. I mean, I think I enjoyed it even far more now as a man who's 48 than when I was 1996. So I was, I don't know, in my 20s.
23, 24.
Yeah, so I was 23. Yeah, it's a classic. I mean, and it's really, I ask really, challenging questions about just what it means to be human, and what it means when a certain generation's values start to come into conflict and tension with the new generation in the guise of these super heroic beings. Great stuff, gentlemen. Great stuff. And like I said, it really resonated, because I was thinking to myself over and over, like, what would Superman be doing here now with us? So
do we know does anybody remember off the top of their head what month that came out in the year?
Ooh.
that I don't.
Sometime in the spring, I think.
So the spring of 96. So that would have been, all right. I'm trying to think where I was, because this story hit at a perfect time. I mean, I was collecting comics since, issue 21 of G.I. Joe. So that's the early to mid 80s.
May of 96, Shane. May of 96.
May of 96. Okay. So you're talking 10 plus years into me collecting. But, and I had gone to comic book stores, and I had been friends with comic book store owners, but not necessarily with people that go into a comic book store. And not because I wouldn't be. I would go into a store, I'd get my books, I'd talk to the owner, I'd leave. There wasn't the hanging around at these stores that I visited like there was once I discovered Golden Eagle. So for this to come out in May of 96 meant that it stretched May, June, July, and August. And I got married in September and moved closer to Reading, discovered Golden Eagle comics sometime within the next 6 months. So that was still in this story's heyday. The excitement, the absolute elation that came from this story being published. And that's where I met Peter and our friends Alex and John and Kevin Moyer, and the hours we would spend talking about this story when we would get together are almost immeasurable as time went on. Marvel's was out at this time too, relatively speaking. So for me, this story's especially dear to my heart because of what I was able to do by going to this store and being allowed to hang out with these guys every Wednesday, eventually becoming friends and discussing this stuff at nausea when we would get together. It was just a fantastic time. Um, 2 years later, and he cried out with a loud voice. This radio drama came out, full cast, fantastic.
I am one of the people who put that on the internet. I think I mentioned that on the show before, Shane, that there's a YouTube version somebody else put together, but I'm 95% certain it's using the audio that I first
Nice,
back in the day. So yeah.
nice. I loved when the first, I think it was a hardback, came out and it had extra content in it with Orion and Aquaman, and you just couldn't get enough of it. And any little more tidbit I have, oh God, I wish I would have gotten it out. Around the corner on my reference bookshelf, I have what's called Comixology Volume 1, which is a huge thick tome all about Kingdom Come.
Does it
And
have
it was
the Super Friends style cover?
Yes, yes. And it was supposed to be something that came out often, but that was the only issue that came out because of some rights thing or it just didn't last. And for a while that was extremely hard to find.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that volume to read through. It's fantastic. So if you get the chance to ever find one and you love Kingdom Come, it's a great reference material with so much more information in it.
One
But
thing
yeah,
I wanted to mention that struck me about this story, and again, it just shows what a great writer Mark Waid is. One of my favorite parts of the story is really the epilogue when the three icons meet in the restaurant, incognito,
Planet Krypton.
sort of discuss, their future plans. And again, this is why Mark Waid's one of the best in the business. I mean, you're always conscious of like who these icons are, but he so explores the deep ties between the three of them and how that comes out in like the food order and how they banter with each other and how they approach these issues they're discussing. Mark Waid, man, he never misses.
and with those three characters in particular, I love how Batman is, as always, of the mind of planning for every contingency to get to his ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman, who's become almost ruthless, well beyond what I had ever read her being, and Superman, who wrestled with every single decision that came through that story. When Wonder Woman's trying to get a gulag built, he's like, what do you mean imprisonment? What? I'm not comfortable with this. Like, just the dynamic between the three of them and their three distinct points of view, yet the only way they can resolve anything is, as they always do, is coming together to do it.
And the story also, you made a great point there, Shane. The story also really explores something we've never really seen before, which is Superman thrust into the role of basically a world leader, of essentially like a state, so to speak, and how for all his power, he really struggles and really feels he's not really meant to be doing this.
Yeah.
And the fallout from that, we could spend a whole episode talking about.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, talk about something that is ideal for the footnotes treatment.
Yep.
There's so much to unpack, not only in terms of plot and theme, as insightfully expounded by Chris, but just in the visual detail. Talk about an Easter egg hunt. I mean, it's more Easter eggs than anything else.
Yep.
Well, while it isn't quite the footnotes treatment, I just went ahead and searched the archives for episode 417, April 17th, 2008. There was an off the racks on Kingdom Come.
Nice.
And afterwards, some conversation on 2000 AD because everything comes back to 2000 AD. So go figure on that. What I'll say about Kingdom Come is there are a few comic books that can be as approachable while at the same time being as sophisticated.
Well put.
Is. You can love it from a surface level of these are all my heroes and I get to see them at their lowest trying to get back up to their highest as they battle changes in society, or you can look further into it and actually see, what Mark Waid and Alex Ross were thinking at the time and where potentially the DC universe and possibly even this world could go. And it's layers of the onion. You peel it back, you peel it back, you peel it back, and there's so much more to it. And when I love a comic book where I can, that when I picked it up, it was great, and now I pick it up now, and it's that much greater because
Yep.
as I'm older, I can learn more from it, and I can understand it that much greater. And that is so Kingdom Come. And I'll even say that's the Kingdom to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It's a different beast, but I think together as a story, they both work really well, both original and follow up. It's a very different sequel. I'll give it that, but I still appreciate the Kingdom for what it is. And yes, it did give us hyper time, even though nobody paid attention to it.
I loved Hyper Time. I'm sorry. I know we've talked about it briefly here and there.
Shane,
I
love
still loved Hyper Time.
rant.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, honestly, one of my honorable mentions, once I figure out the issues, will be that run of Superboy.
Oh, fantastic!
Because that was excellent. What it was, but yeah, no, Kingdom Come. The other thing I'll say about Kingdom Come is that I love Alex Ross's art, but I love Alex Ross's art for the most part on covers, because he's striking, but at times I can find him a little bit stiff. That's personal preference. It's the posing and it's the process of the painting that sometimes makes it feel that way.
Well, sometimes it can be overwhelming. I mean,
exactly. Right. I am not overwhelmed by Kingdom Come. I am
absolutely
not overwhelmed by Kingdom Come. I think it's, which is why I agree with you, Chris. It's probably, in my opinion, his greatest work, because it doesn't fall into that trapping, and I can feel the movement on every single page, even while it's static, and it's you can't beat that.
Well, when you look at the art of the minister's name, is it Norman?
Norman.
Okay, yeah.
The scenes with him and the Spectre, which are very quiet, really. And when you look at the detail in Norman's face as he struggles with trying to even just comprehend what it is he's experiencing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I mean, for me, that's some of the best art in the whole story, is the scenes with him and the Spectre, essentially. So,
and as it should be, he's our eyes through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Ross based that character on his own father.
Yeah.
Yep. Excellent choice there, sir. Excellent choice. All right, onward to our number 2, and go ahead and start us off.
Who's starting us? I missed that.
Bird.
Okay. Oh, yes. Number 2 for me, The Golden Age.
Oh, that's a good one too. Shit.
Oh man. Ooh, that's good. That's good.
That's real good.
All right, Chris, you're number 2.
Okay, this is a caveat. So if anybody has my selection as their number 1, I will defer to those, and that they can talk about it for the number 1. My number 2 is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
That was, in fact, my number 1.
That's a good one too.
Bird, I will defer. You can talk about it as your number 1.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, my number 2, and this was a tough choice because there's a lot of good choices on my list, and I'm gonna go for something that I've talked about before, that on other podcasts that I will go ahead and mention here. My list stayed mostly What If and Elseworlds, and I'm sticking with it here. My number 2 is Titans, Scissor, Paper, Stone by Adam Warren.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, I don't either.
Manga style.
Yes, indeed.
Huh.
Shane, you're number 2.
You know, I was going to go with Dark Knight Returns, but I'm not. I'm changing it. X-Men Age of Apocalypse.
Excellent. And Murd, the floor is yours.
All right. Okay, The Golden Age, written by James Robinson, with art by Paul Smith and Richard Ory. It was a 4-issue prestige format miniseries published in 1993 and 94. And it was Robinson getting a chance to work with just as many of the Golden Age characters in DC's library as he felt like. And that, of course, includes some holdovers from Quality Comics, which had been folded into DC's library back in the 70s already. Didn't work in the Marvel family, which is probably just as well. Also didn't... interesting creative choices here. He chose not to include Golden Age versions of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and even figures like the Spectre and Dr. Fate, because that would have complicated the dynamics a little bit too much. He was trying to deal with the human level here of the costumed adventurers of the 1940s. And he was delving into what became of them in this alternate reality he was creating in the post-war years. As he picks up pretty much right after the war has ended, and just how things evolve on the home front in the wake of the watershed moment in human history that was World War II, and what became of all these mystery men as they came home and tried to adjust to life in the post-war times, when the focus of the world, both within this reality and in the real world where the superhero comics were published, started to shift away from costumed adventurers and Nazi smashers and all that sort of thing. And the zeitgeist was just kind of changing and leaving these characters behind. And so Robinson is painting a picture of the angst and the disillusionment that was kind of gripping these characters as they began to feel kind of obsolete and out of place in this new world. And making some social commentary type statements about the world too, just delving into some of the arguably crypto-fascistic undertones that existed in the early superhero concept and also in the real-world American society in the post-war years. As Cold War paranoia began to set in, communist witch hunts happened, and the United States began to place a higher and higher premium on conformity and persecution of differing ideologies. And we came dangerously close to becoming the kind of beast that we set out to slay in World War II. And we see this through the framing of the villain of the piece, which is a couple of the biggest World War II villains that there are, assuming the guise of bright, shiny post-war heroes and politicians. Not to give too much more away, but the Ultra-Human Knight is definitely involved here. And so and Robinson just to borrow Chris's word, masterfully interprets a variety of Golden Age characters here, but mostly lesser characters. He doesn't get too much into figures like Jay Garrick. I mentioned that Dr. Fate and the Spectre, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, all absent pretty much from this story. He doesn't even really do anything with one of his favorites, Wesley Dodd, the Sandman. But he does make a much greater use of Johnny Quick than perhaps you'd expect. The comedy relief sidekick of this second string superhero, Mr. America, Fat Man, he is one of the major characters. The Paul Kirk Manhunter has a major role to play. Liberty Bell, the Tarantula, etc. He just throws in as many as he thinks he has room for, and it really makes me long for the Golden Age ongoing series that might have been. But I guess we just have to take solace in this little thing called Starman that he eventually got around to writing.
Yes, we can.
Yes. Some of the themes and characterizations he introduced in this, which is technically in Elseworlds, did find their way into mainstream post-crisis DC continuity through the Starman series. And so if you're a Starman fan and you never sought out and read Robinson's Golden Age miniseries, for crying out loud, get out there and do it. Because it's fantastic storytelling, and I don't want to give short shrift to the art either, because Paul Smith, he adopts this uncannily beautiful and yet disturbing pseudo Norman Rockwell kind of style, where he's depicting scenes of life in post-war America and just masterfully dredging up the darkness that underlay the images of American life that Rockwell painted for his Saturday Evening Post covers. And so it's just the ideal style for the kind of story that was being told, provided just wonderful, immersive atmosphere for this tale of America at a critical crossroads between a time of shiny heroes and a time of uncertainty, both in our nation's real history and in comics history, because he kind of Robinson kind of sets the stage for the atomic age of comics when superheroes took a back seat for several years. But there's a passing of the torch moment when an important figure of Silver Age history shows up to aid the Golden Age heroes in their direst hour, in the final climax. And it kind of teases a sequel to this, in which Robinson would revisit the Silver Age and do the same thing. But we can, again, take solace in the fact that never came to pass, because Darwin Cook came along and basically did exactly that with his DC The New Frontier, which didn't quite make it into my top 5, but it's... I might be pulling a Shane pick here and squashing the two of them together, despite the fact that they're completely unrelated miniseries, but in terms of creative team and subject matter. But in terms of theme, they do very much the same thing for differing periods of comics history and differing sets of characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you like the DC The New Frontier and have read that and haven't read the Golden Age, let me repeat my recommendation here. Just this is something that really ought to be on the shelves of most of you listening to this.
I can't believe I forgot to put that on my list originally.
I'm a little surprised too.
Yeah.
I thought for sure I'd have to wrestle you for it.
It's astounding the things I have forgotten as I keep writing down stuff, which now is a lengthy alternates list.
Well, I mean, Murd, I can't believe I forgot Golden Age too. I mean, and
Such a
you're on
great
the money in that. If you love Starman, everybody in this program reveres Starman. That book just dovetails perfectly with it, and you
Yeah.
really, if you love Starman, you need to read the Golden Age, and it's like I could put it any better. I mean, Murd had all the right notes there, but
Yeah.
just the way it captures, the feel of the McCarthy era and then blends it into the DC universe so seamlessly. Great stuff.
And I mean, I know it is in Elseworlds, but haven't they in some ways incorporated some of that into main continuity at some point? Or
Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
yes, especially the Robinson's characterization of Ted Knight.
right?
The
Yeah.
idea spent some time in the post-war years in a sanatorium, dealing with crippling guilt over his contributions to the Manhattan Project, for one thing, but also implicitly all the stellar radiation he had absorbed over the years. I mean, there's one of the most deft strokes of deconstruction of Golden Age comics ideology is when Ted Knight is he's fretting over the fact that he might have brought about the whole Golden Age of heroics by summoning down a blast of like cosmic radiation that rendered various Golden Age heroes' improbable origins possible. And that also scrambled ordinarily sane American citizens' brains to the extent that they put on costumes and went out and punched criminals in the face regularly, despite not having any superpowers at all. So now that whole thing didn't quite make it into DC continuity, but a lot of Robinson's ideas about Ted Knight, particularly, did make it into the Starman series.
Excellent. Yep. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the Golden Age when I read it. I think as someone who's not nearly as much up on his comic book history as others on this podcast and in general, it was a very good, not quite introduction because I didn't know who the JSA were before this, but an excellent introduction to the past of DC Comics. Even as they were, at times, down on their luck and, dealing with, their identities being, revealed and what have you, and, a traitor within their midst and all that jazz. I think he gets to the heart of why the Golden Age characters work really, really well. And I very much enjoyed what I read, and it's a favorite of mine to this day as well. So. Good pick, sir. Good pick.
Yeah, such a great story.
Yep. Alrighty. I forget. Was I next or was Chris?
Well, it was me, but as I said, since I picked what I figured was probably going to be Merge number one, and I was correct in that assumption, I'm giving time on the floor to him so we can discuss that when we get to the number ones.
You don't want to tout one of your alternates at this time, Chris?
What's that?
You sure you don't want to tout one of your alternate picks at this time?
All right, I'll throw in you know what, Mert, I'll throw in a quick alternate. Fair enough, because this just missed my top five. Another day could have been my top five, which is Superman Red Sun.
That's in my alternates too.
Which again, being the history student I am and the teacher I am, they had me at, Superman ship came down in the Soviet Union during the Stalinist period. Okay, I'm in. And I think it's Mark Miller again, isn't it?
It is.
It is. Yep.
Yep. And it's as good as the concept sounds because it's Superman, acting as, the protector of one of the most monstrous regimes in human history. And what happens when after Stalin dies and he essentially becomes the new leader of the Soviet Union, and how his efforts to bring, the utopian ideals of that society to the rest of the world, and how that runs up against, the United States, which refuses to participate, and also specifically to Lex Luthor. I don't want to say much more about this because it is one of the greatest of all the Elseworlds produced, and there is also a Batman character in it who is Russian, and so it's a great costume design, I think, for that character.
Yeah.
Who is not on board with Superman's utopian ideals and what ensues there. But this is I think this was made into an animated film too, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
More recently too. It
Yeah,
wasn't.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't
Have you seen it?
either.
Have you seen it, Ian?
Wait, yeah, no, I don't believe I have. No, now that
Okay.
I'm thinking about it.
I'll
Yeah.
have to watch that. But if you love these types of Elseworlds that really play around with historical events and historical figures, and if you're really fascinated by like the Soviet period and the Stalinist period, this is definitely a book I recommend because again, it really struggles with or asks uncomfortable questions about what would Superman still be, Superman, if he's operating for this horrific police state, and how does he reconcile who he is and what we think who we assume he always is with that kind of regime, and does he try to to change it and so forth, and they play out all those ideas in the story. It's wonderful. Thanks, Mert.
It's been out since February of 2020.
Yep.
Oh, the animated film. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and that and pretty much every other animated film is available on HBO Max.
Great.
Yeah, everything that was a part of DC Universe as a service is shutting down and becoming DC Infinite in like 2 days from when we're recording this.
Yeah. Yep.
But all of that stuff is available on HBO Max, including some stuff that wasn't never even on the DC Universe app. Is all in one place now at HBO Max.
So far, unless I missed an announcement, things like the Super Friends cartoons, the JLA cartoon, Justice League animated stuff, that stuff's not on yet, but most everything else show-wise is, but all the movies are.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if Justice League and Justice League Unlimited are sooner than later, because I don't see them not. I know Batman animated series and Batman Beyond are both there.
Yep.
That's good to see. All right, so my number 2 could not be more of an Ian pick if tried, because I know that this is not a book that everybody loves. However, my manga side loved this when I read it for the first time, and it's absolutely a product of its time. Adam Warren put this out in the mid 90s. It was actually originally going to be one of the Elseworlds, part of the Legends of the Dead Earth annuals in 1996, but was held back, and I guess possibly because it wasn't even completed on time, and then was put out in 1997 with Adam Warren at the helm on both writing and art. It's manga as heck. It's about a team of Titans-esque characters in a far-flung future, trying to come together as a team as the future itself has changed dramatically, and they try to essentially from historical records in some ways recreate the first battle with Trigon that the Titans had. With their band of merry men. One guy actually puts on a like a simulator of a personality that he thinks is Batman. And my mistake, that he thinks is Nightwing. That's what it was. He thinks it's Nightwing, and by the end of the issue, you find out it was Batman the entire time. So essentially, the personality of Batman's integrated with this teenager, and they're battling for the sake of battling. And he's like, "What am I doing here? What are we fighting? What are we doing? All right, I guess I'm in." Because what else is he gonna do? It's a very silly book, but I adore the artwork, and I like the futuristic setting, and the characters themselves are fleshed out just enough to not just be cardboard cutout manga types. But I preface it is not going to be for everybody, but it's my type of book, and it still resonates with me, even if it's not quite the Titans series that people might have been expecting when it came out. Scissor, Paper, Stone remains on my list.
And what was it called? You just said it. Scissor, Paper, Stones?
Scissor, Paper, Stone. It's called.
Scissor, Paper, Stone. I'm going to have to look that up.
Teen Titans, Scissor, Paper, Stone?
Titans, Scissors, Paper, Stone.
Huh.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I like Adam Warren. I've never heard of that.
I think it is on the DC Universe app, if I remember correctly. Because when I did a search for Elseworlds, I'm pretty sure it came up. So you can find it there.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
it's worth a read, definitely, to see if it's up your alley or not. But it is up my alley, and that's why it's on my list.
Yeah.
All right, Shaney Poo.
All right, Age of Apocalypse. So this was to me, I don't remember this happening. I think this happened before Heroes Were Born, didn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't remember a publishing company stopping production on a series of titles to replace them with new versions for a few months just to tell a story. And I was reading a lot of X-Men books at this time.
Who wasn't?
Right. I'll be honest, when it first heard about it, I thought it was going to be dumb. I thought it was just going to suck. And then you had the little prologue of Legion story being told,
Yep.
and I was hooked. And from that point on, I had gotten all the X-Men titles. This was one that came midstream in my memory of the episode. Or else I would have researched and written down all the different titles that came out. But you essentially canceled or suspended all the existing X-Men books and replaced them.
4 months, right? I think it was
4 months.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of them. And then you had things like Universe X, which book ended what was happening in the rest of the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
You had X-Men Chronicles that told some stories.
Yep.
You had the first appearance of Dark Beast, which resonated in the regular 616 after
the X-Men character too.
X-Men. Yep. The cable version.
Yep.
Just a fantastic story of taking existing X-Men and their villains and kind of mashing them up a little bit. Some were allies that weren't. People were on the outs that shouldn't be. It's a fantastic read. They've traded it a few times. I've considered just getting rid of my issues, and I just can't do it. I've had them on my sale pile maybe 4 times. I just can't do it. I keep putting them back on the shelf. It's a wonderful read.
And Shane, let me echo your sentiment, because we're so jaded now and burned out with crossovers and all those types of events. I mean, I don't even read much of them anymore when they come out now. But
same here.
I remember when that came out. I remember thinking, even though I was much younger, like, this is really good. Like, it was. They really took the time to really think and build the world that we were immersed in, and it was such a. It was such a tense world because people were dying left and right.
Yeah.
You really felt how thing was on the edge, and everybody was like in a state of constant peril in those stories. There's a lot of great artwork in it. You mentioned the Universe X one. I think that's where they had the story where they showed where Gwen Stacy was in that world, and like
that
Tony
was 2
Stark.
issues.
That was shape of art, beautiful.
They were hard to find because I didn't even know that was coming out there, because I guess at that time I wasn't doing previews. I was just going in and pulling stuff off the shelf, and then I caught wind of it, and I had a hell of a time finding those issues.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because it was around that time that I started to actually do comic shows as a vendor. This is well before I opened a store. And I remember anytime I found any of those books on the stand, I would buy them because they were hard to find, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And then you could sell them, bag and sell them for a couple extra bucks, because they were often, especially the number 1 issues of all those series, were difficult to find. And Ian, I've got a nerd question for you, because is that story considered its own reality, or is it kind of in continuity?
So I think it's at this point, it is definitely its own reality, because they've done it enough times. And it essentially along the lines of the Heroes Reborn universe, because that became its own thing.
Yeah.
Though it was, quote unquote, the line for a while. They've told stories in the Age of Apocalypse universe.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Even though
Exiles, for example.
Exiles, yes.
Yep.
And
Exiles. Didn't Mutant X come out of that as well?
no.
Oh, no?
I thought Marilyn
No,
Pryor came out of that.
No.
Which is fine. That's another great book.
As Murd was saying, Mutant X is its own separate reality.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But it's its own thing. It stands as a standing alternate reality, because even after we reset ours, that reality still exists.
Yeah.
Multiverse.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
God,
great pick, Shane. Great pick.
That follow-up of Exiles, that was fantastic as well.
Oh, sure.
I absolutely love that. And the one-shots Tales of the Age of Apocalypse, they had a couple of those. Yep. It was really well done. And again, when I first heard about it, I wasn't even going to bother. I thought it was terrible. And that prologue telling Legion's story and what was going to happen just just hooked me, and I was in it for the long haul.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, no, that came out at the right time for me, to get really, really interested in what was going on. I was way into X-Men at the time, and when they switched it over, my nerd brain exploded. Like what?
Yeah.
Like what happened here? And
Well,
yeah.
and even there was the X-Men. Was it the X-Men Chronicles book? There was like a quarterly thing.
That was Chronicles.
And
That was X-Men Unlimited. I think it became
X-Men Unlimited. X-Men Unlimited.
Chronicles was the Age of Apocalypse
Yep.
version. Yeah, that's right.
X-Men Unlimited. One of the later issues after the event ended had Dark Beast coming into it or something. That was hard to find too. Oh,
and the other part of that was interesting was that Generation X had just come out like right before Age of Apocalypse, and then they even shifted that over to Generation Next. So it was a bold approach. Like, it was really well done.
Well,
and it really was.
Especially since Blink had just died in she was a founding member of Generation X, and then becoming such a pivotal character in Age of Apocalypse was a very very good choice.
Yep.
Well done.
Number ones.
All right. Onward to our number ones. And Murd, we already know what yours is, but how about we remind the folks?
Okay. Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Excellent. Chris, you're number one.
This one was actually very easy. The Dark Knight Returns.
All right. And that's the reason why it's not my number one, because
Then I'm glad I changed mine. my two pick.
My number one, and this is, again, I've been waffling back and forth on whether I was going to go with my What If as my number one or whether I was going to go with this, but I'm going to go with The Nail.
Oh, that's on my alternates. That's a good one. And my number one is not the biggest, most popular thing in the world, but it's a favorite of mine. Like, I had on here Rock of Ages and The Nail, Another Nail, Earth One. Earth One. That's the one with the crime syndicate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or is that Earth Two?
No.
Oh yeah,
that's Earth Two.
Really, Earth 2. Yep.
I had all these grandiose stories, and other ones from Batman too. I still came down to Justice League. I don't remember if it's America or of America. That's terrible to me. Justice League numbers 72 to 75. Destiny's Hand.
Mm.
All right.
It was probably Justice League America at that point.
Probably Justice League America with that numbering. Yeah, you're right.
All right. Go ahead, Murd.
All right. Well, now this is maybe a little bit of a stretch for an Elseworlds, since technically it was in continuity for like a month when it was published before.
But Murd, they called it Imaginary Story in the heading, though.
They do. I was just getting to that because, as we said at the beginning of all this, our parameters for what constitutes an Elseworlds or What If here are pretty loose, and it's pretty much anything that doesn't stay in continuity.
That's right.
And it's pretty explicitly defined, as Chris said, as an imaginary story. In the words of writer Alan Moore, which I must quote in their entirety, this is an imaginary story, which may never happen, but then again may, about a perfect man who came from the sky and did only good. It tells of his twilight, when the great battles were over and the great miracles long since performed, of how his enemies conspired against him, and of that final war in the snow-blind wastes beneath the northern lights, of the women he loved and of the choice he made between them, of how he broke the most sacred oath, and how finally all the things he had were taken from him, save one. It ends with a wink. It begins in a quiet Midwestern town one summer afternoon in the quiet Midwestern future. Away in the big city, people still sometimes glance up hopefully from the sidewalks, glimpsing a distant speck in the sky. But no, it's only a bird, only a plane. Superman died 10 years ago. This is an imaginary story. Aren't they all?
Just got to chill.
Every time I hear or read it. And yeah, so it's a true masterwork of the medium, and it might just be the greatest Superman story ever told. It's, with the possible exception of the related text Crisis on Infinite Earths, to which I've devoted so much of my personal and academic lives. This might just be my favorite comic book story of them all. So naturally, I had to place it at the #1 position on this list, dealing with stories that are technically out of continuity. Though, as I hinted earlier, it kind of caps off an old continuity. It was still kind of technically valid as a possible future ending point for the pre-crisis legend of Superman, before John Byrne and post-crisis reality came crashing in. But yeah, this Alan Moore volunteered himself very forcefully, so legend tells us, to be the writer of this story when Julie Schwartz was trying to come up with the right creative team to tell the final story of Superman. One story has it that he reached across the table and seized him by the neck, and then said, I will murder you if you allow anyone else to write this story. Actually, it might have been Dick Giordano who supposedly did that too. But see, this is the way myths change over time. But anyway, it's kind of, I guess there's identifiable similarities in the tone, the approach that Moore took here, and the one that Grant Morrison later took in his own take on concentrating the mythic essence of Superman in his All-Star Superman story about 20 years later. This was published in I guess it was the early part of 1986. And I don't have the issue numbers right in front of me. Here we go. Action number 583 and Superman Volume 1 number 423. And it's a two-parter, and it's Alan Moore with art by Kurt Swan and inks by George Perez and Kurt Schaffenberger. Yes, and it looks as good as it sounds, believe me. And no one but Kurt Swan could have penciled this, since he was, in my mind at least, the definitive penciler of Superman's adventures for his Silver Age career. So it brings an end to the Silver and Bronze Age, the Earth 1 version of Superman. It's, well, as Moore's language in that long passage I read suggests, it's Götterdämmerung. It's like the Norse Ragnarok for the pre-crisis Superman, the twilight of this godlike heroic figure out on the northern wastes, a grand confrontation between Superman, his closest allies, his friends and lovers up there outside his fortress of solitude, and on the one side of it, and some of his greatest foes on the other side, the new Luthor and Brainiac team, which is kind of chilling in a Superman the movie 3 kind of way. And the revelation of what has been his greatest foe all this time, kind of a personification of Silver Age whimsy gone horribly wrong. I won't even tell you who it is. I think most of you listening will have read this story before, but just in case you haven't, it's not who you think. And it's just, he gathers together all the greatest elements of Superman's mythology and uses them in wonderful and horrible ways to bring Superman's pre-crisis history to a very satisfying and unforgettable conclusion. I've been raving about this story since I first read it sometime in the early to mid-90s. I have this, this is the edition that I have. It might be the first trade paperback edition of it published, I'm not sure.
I think that's the one I have too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said before, there are arguments to be had as to whether or not it qualifies as an Elseworld, but we're not going to have those arguments here because it's our hill and our beans. And as Chris Alan Moore both pointed out, this is an imaginary story, and it's one of the best ever written. Yep. And by heaven, if you have not read it and you're any kind of Superman fan, you must.
Yeah, Mert, I mean, there's no way I'm going to follow that. No one said it better than you. The only other thing I would say about it, because I just read it again this past weekend to freshen up on it, is that because they have such classic artists who remind you of are so evocative of that time period, that Silver and Bronze Age, that when characters die in the story, it's all the more striking and unsettling because they're dying in that art style, which you're not accustomed to seeing characters die in that type of style. And it's really moving and jarring when that happens. Oh, wow. That's all I wanted to say.
Well said too, Chris.
The first part of this is one of 3 books that I have slabbed. I maybe about 10 years ago, I decided to put in, 3 books to CGC. And I think it's a 9.4 graded copy that I managed to grab off of eBay that I went ahead and slabbed myself. And I would gladly buy another copy to read at some point. I've read it a couple times online. It is easily one of my favorite Alan Moore comics, if not my favorite Alan Moore comic. Because you're absolutely right, Mert. It just gets Superman better than so many other comic books have. Beautifully done. All right.
I forgot.
Onward to our other number one. Chris, we can head over to you.
Oh, okay. Well, we've all spoken about The Dark Knight Returns many, many times on this program in various ways over the years. So I'm not going to belabor the point too much, but when I was thinking about this list, this was the easiest selection for me. I read this the first time, not when it came out, but not long after in one of its earliest trade paperback iterations. And so I was, 13, 14, maybe even 12 at that point. And thinking back, because I've read it, a gazillion times since then. I usually read it at least once a year. And what strikes me all the more with each passing year as I read as I get older is, and I remember this when I read it early on as a kid, is that it was the first time that Batman terrified me, where I felt the fear that the criminals must have felt when they are dealing with him. And there's one scene that always sticks with me. It's when he first returns in the costume, and he's taking on some criminals, and he cripples one. And he picks the guy out by his lapels, and the guy's screaming to God for mercy. And Batman's like, and the police have guns on him. Batman's just ignoring the cops, and he's just talking to this criminal and just scaring. The guy's like screaming to Jesus, basically. I think he's saying like, Jesus, sweet Jesus. And I remember as a kid, like my eyes popping out of my head, like, because, I grew up with like Adam West as Batman, right? And, I hadn't read a lot of Batman comics yet up to that point. Here and there, but nothing consistently. So when I read this, it just, everything changed. Like when it came to my perception of Batman, my perception of what comics could do. It was around the same time like reading like Miller's Daredevil stuff as well. Like, my mind was just blown basically. And as I got older, more and more I started to appreciate, again, and we've used this term a lot with some of these stories, the mythic resonance in that story. Just the opening pages where they show Bruce Wayne, roaming the streets of Gotham, hands thrust in his pockets, this grimace on his face. I always remember there's a guy, classic Miller 80s with Klaus Janson ink, like this jagged face agape with like a "We Are Damned" sign on his plaque. He's roaming around the streets of the hellscape of Gotham. And there's something so evocative of the 1980s in this story, just how people perceived the world and the near future when we thought about it in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Think of all the movies of that. Shay knows exactly what I'm talking about. All the movies of that time, we the Terminator and RoboCop and so forth and so on. It's all there, and it's Batman, And again, visiting Batman, as you assume he's probably like in his 50s in this story. So Batman is an older man and trying to basically battle against his own mortality and go out there one more time against opponents he really has no business fighting.
Yeah.
And you're just so taken in by all the elements of the Batman mythos are there, but everything is sordid and dirty and old. Like I always remember how Selena Kyle is portrayed, like she's like the madam of like a whorehouse. She just looks old and like the lipstick on her, and it's still one of the most terrifying Jokers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, because it's one of those stories that when I read it, it's same Born Again, or You Batman Year One, I still get chills at certain scenes. And when the Joker murders all the Boy Scouts, and Batman is coming down from the sky with Robin, Carrie, and he's narrating how she's horrified, and he just sends, "It ends tonight, Joker." Oh! And by the way, the animated two-parter with is it Peter Weller?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That
It is.
Yeah.
Fair casting.
Yep. Yeah, but both parts of that are available on HBO Max. There's also a version that combines them into one movie. And I have that as a digital copy that I got a while ago. And it works beautifully, all stitched together as one thing.
Yep.
And Murr, just one last comment, because Murr just talked about DK2 on his time bubble. And his wonderful analysis reminded me again of just the because it's controversial how Miller portrays Superman in the original Dark Knight, because it's very much Superman as basically he's so consumed with his ideals and he's allowed himself to become a stooge of a corrupt American government. And what that means. But at the same time, in general, I agree with Murd's take on Miller's take on Superman and how he's not a big fan of it. But where I will differ a little bit, there's a moment in the story where I think Miller does capture the mythic grandeur of Superman. It's when he's been he takes care of the Soviet missile, but he's in the wake of the explosion and he's actually kind of decaying from it. And he starts to speak to essentially the sun and the earth, calling upon them to restore him. And the way the art is done, it is sheer myth as they show Superman rejuvenate himself in the rays of the sun. It's for me one of the great sequences when it comes to capturing Superman the character. So I could go on for hours, but that's my number one.
I have very complicated feelings about The Dark Knight Returns. On the one hand, I love it. I think that it's an excellently, executed comic book, and the story that's told is really well done. What I have a problem with is how many people out there that I know, because I started, that's one of the entire reasons why I started up my American Comics for Manga Fans panel, is how many people try to introduce people to comic books with The Dark Knight Returns. And I wholeheartedly believe that is, while I said that Kingdom Come is a type of comic that, you can come at from all sides, I believe you have to actually be familiar with Batman to fully appreciate The Dark Knight Returns for what it is.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Like, you need to have read Batman. You need to appreciate him for what he is to understand where he is at his lowest. Yeah. And I really, really like what Frank Miller did. I don't appreciate how many Dark Knight Returns clones came out afterwards. Some good, some bad. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, good. Half of Image's line, bad. It's just, when something is very popular, like we said earlier on in the episode, when something is very popular, that you want to make 7 of them. And there's a reason why the first one is popular. and that's what Dark Knight Returns is.
And you're absolutely right, Ian, because it's inevitable. And the 80s, we always have the whole grim and gritty shtick when we talk about the 1980s in comics.
Yeah.
And the Dark Knight is definitely one of the progenitors of that whole approach. And again, imitation is always, a form of flattery, but imitation often falls very short, very flat as well. But and again, Murd had me thinking about all this with his wonderful analysis on this latest time bubble again. But the way Batman is portrayed. See, I'm going on about this. I shouldn't. One last comment, but the way Batman is portrayed in the dark, and especially as I look at it now as an older man, it's very troubling. Like, it's not like Ian said, this is not Batman like at the peak of his like sort of heroic, Dark Knight stature. This is a man who is almost bordering on, it's a term I'd use in another analysis today, almost like a crypto-fascist approach to what his mission. And, when we think about the 80s, we think about, vigilantes, we think about, urban crime. Like, in many ways, it's gratifying when you see him do what he's doing. But then you also have to ask questions that are very troubling about, okay, but is he going too far?
Yeah.
And
is
then
he right?
Again, and then of course the whole role of Superman is also troubling. It's a whole nother discussion.
I can remember picking that up. It was the very first comic store I ever went to. Not the first time I'd been there, but the first store that I was a regular at. It was Turk's Comics in Pottstown, and they had the little like cardboard standee, and it was issue 2 with the bat symbol on it. And that's why I picked it up, because oh, look, new Batman comic, something I've never seen. I picked it up and got home and I read, I'm like, what the hell is this? Because I did not get it at all at that point. I'm reading issue 2. The artwork's kind of weird. I'd never read anything like, all right. I eventually, when it came out, the next 2 months, got 3 and 4. Still didn't make much sense to it. Then I found issue 1 and read it as a whole, and I liked it. But it wasn't until years later, and I kept rereading it. And as I read more Batman comics, and I think this goes to Ian's point, I do think you need to read more of Batman first to understand, and even to read what happens to Robin. And I don't mean just Dick Grayson, I mean Robin throughout the history, to fully appreciate what it means to take on Carrie as Robin at that point. Even though all of these other Robins weren't there, I think that helps flesh out the story a little bit more, gives you a little bit more of Batman's mentality, the hard decision to not only do what he's doing, but also take on another protege, which he really probably didn't want to do at first.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've really come to love and appreciate that story as one of the pinnacles. But I don't think it's something you introduce comics or Batman as. You have to grow into reading that one.
Most definitely. Yep. Yeah. All right. My number one. Now, since we just had whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, how about we go with what if the Man of Tomorrow never was? And that's in a way the setup for the Nail. As it's a very simple, idea. In fact, in some ways, in and of itself, even though it's an Elseworlds, it's a what if. What if Mom, Pa Kent got a flat tire and we're not there to rescue baby Kal-El? And what happened to him afterwards? What happened to the world afterwards? And there we are with the Nail. We're presented with a world where, Clark Kent is not a person that we know, that the Justice League still formed, but there's a gaping hole in it because their ringer, their guy, their most powerful person is not there. And because of that, and because of some other things that happen in this world, a lot of different things happen. For one thing, Lex Luthor is in power. And this is not President Lex, this is Mayor Lex, as he is the mayor of Metropolis. I don't know how someone megalomaniacal can wind up in power. That could never possibly happen in real life. But he is in power in Metropolis, and his right-hand man is, of all people, Jimmy Olsen. And Jimmy Olsen still had all the weird stuff happen to him that happened in Superman and Action Comics over the years. He was Turtle Boy, he did go elastic. He had all this weird stuff happen to him over the years, and that winds up being very important to the plot of the Nail and what winds up happening later on in that storyline. Batman's life. We were just talking about him being at his lowest. Batman's life is at his lowest here in the Nail, as at one point in the storyline, his proteges, Batgirl and Robin, get offed. And where is Batman after that? Luckily, he has Catwoman at his side. Hi, Tom King. And he's able to get himself through it. But he's certainly a much more damaged individual in this reality than he is in the DC universe that we know. And the Justice League has to come to terms with just how different the world is, and if they have a place in it, as something akin to the Registration Act with Civil War is breaking out. And superheroes are just viewed very differently without a tentpole, without a namesake like Superman to be there as their front and center. And what happens to the world because of that? And when you get to the reveal, because I'll say this much about the Nail, spoilers for the Nail right here, ever so slightly. I'm not going to give away everything, but when you get to the reveal of what happened to Superman and what happened to Kal-El and just how differently he was raised, which then goes further into it in another Nail, the sequel. What a great storytelling idea that Alan Davis came up with, because just how different is Superman when he himself is isolated from the rest of the world? Even though he was raised on Earth, he's not with the rest of society in his most formative years. And it creates a very different person. And you get to know that a little bit in the Nail, and you get that to know that even further in the sequel, Another Nail. And by God, is Alan Davis's artwork gorgeous.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the real star of the show.
He never disappoints.
Yes. No one's quite the draftsman like Alan Davis is. No one makes Alan Davis hair quite like Alan Davis does. You know, has sweeping locks in this entire thing. There's no long-haired Superman per se, but he sure does know how to draw him. And I love this story. Full-heartedly love it, and it had to fall on my list somewhere, and number one's a damn good place for it. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got to read it again, because I haven't read that in a long time. So you stoked me for that.
yep, yeah,
Yeah, it's a fantastic story.
it really is. Yep, it really is. And again, for the follow-up, Another Nail. Although I do prefer the Nail to the Another Nail. It's another one of those things where if you read them as a full story, they do connect really well. And you get to know, especially, that world's Superman a lot better in Another Nail than you do in the previous. So very, very well done all around.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a cool idea for a story in a cool alternate world, but if I'm being honest, the story, it wouldn't really matter to me what the story is. It's just a good excuse to have Alan Davis draw all these classic DC Universe, including the many mutations of Jimmy Olsen.
Yes. 100% agree with you there, Murd. Yeah, it's definitely art over story, but the story is good enough to make the rest of it work. So amen to that. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. The art is just absolutely beautiful. Anytime Alan Davis does something, it piques my interest and makes me look at it.
Yep, definitely. All right, Shannon, we're down to you.
All right. Now, there's a ton of stories on my list that should have been number one and could have been. Part of the reason I picked this is it's one of, after Dark Knight Returns, in my mind, it's one of the next alternate reality stories I read that I can remember being excited about it and really sinking my teeth into. I think it came out in 91. It's Justice League after the whole Giffen DeMatteis McGuire era of the book happened. This is 50 issues later. There's a character called Bloodwind that's in the book at this point, and you really don't know where he came from or who he is. His identity is revealed during this. Our Justice League travels to an alternate reality and gets beat up pretty good by their Justice League. You find out who the villain is of the book, which ties to our universe. It was 4 issues long. The first issue of it even probably was just fun to see two Justice Leagues fight, but I don't remember it being all that great. It's not until you get to the second, third, and fourth issue that it really comes to fruition for me, that really makes this a great story. I think it's a bit underappreciated for what it is. Dan Jurgens wrote it. Rick Burchett, Burchett, was the artist on it. But very well done. And anytime I would go to a convention and see it in a 50-cent bin or $1 bin, pick them up and give them to somebody or just give them to the kids, whatever. I mean, over the last 20 years, I've bought these issues over and over and over again for various reasons. But it's a lot of fun to read. You don't need to know much. Sometimes it would help if you read a few issues before it to get Bloodwind's story that happens up to that point, and then you go through Destiny's Hand to get to find out who he is. But it was a fun book to read.
Jane, what's the numbers again?
72 through 74. I'm sorry, 75. 4 issues.
And that's Justice League, what, volume 2?
Yeah, like as Justice League, A New Beginning happens, and then you have International. This is after that, and that series goes to like what, 101, 105, something like that.
What I was going to ask you about before, I wasn't thinking of this story because I never actually read this. I was thinking, because you were talking about Blue Beetle being alive, what was the New 52 series where they went forward in time with him?
Oh, Justice League 3000.
You enjoyed that, right?
Oh yeah, I love that. That's on my list too. I had such a hard time because there's at least half a dozen Justice League stories that I think could qualify for alternate universe. And by all accounts, Rock of Ages really is one of my top favorite alternate reality stories. But I do think this one's underappreciated, and I just wanted to spotlight that one a little bit.
I have to read it.
It's really well done, I thought. It's a lot of fun.
All right.
And again, totally unexpected. I mean, you picked up one issue, and all of a sudden, boom! After reading this, and then going back and reading some previous Silver Age-ish type Volume 1 stories, this really rang to me like something where you didn't necessarily know it was coming. You just picked up the next issue, and ooh, okay, now we're getting thrown into another reality. And there was no internet to go to,
Right.
like it was just a surprise to me. And I mean, I love Justice League, but this was just a nice mini story, 4 issues long, inside of an existing series that really wasn't a build up to anything. It just, you picked up the issue and there it was.
That's a great number one, because I mean, it's something I've never read about, so I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Definitely. Is it collected in a specific trade? Any idea,
I
Shane?
don't think so. If it is, I'd have to check to see if it's in. So there's the hardbacks and the companion trade paperbacks of a certain type set of Justice League International,
Right.
and get a little bit away from that. I don't remember if it gets to breakdowns or not, which is also a great story, but that's another story.
It sounds like it could probably be found in bargain bins too.
Oh, it absolutely could be.
Yeah.
But then there's the trades of Superman in the Justice League and Wonder Woman in the Justice League. I don't know if it's in there at all. I can't remember exactly where this fits into those trades storylines. I don't think it's in anything. I think with the Justice League, because the Justice League and Justice League Europe trades, they get up to like 6 volumes, and I don't think that encompasses this. I don't recall this being in a trade by itself.
Got it. All right,
Gentlemen, I have to run soon, because I actually have to, uninteresting behind the scenes stuff. I have to walk the dog still. So do you mind if I just shout out my alternates? Then I have to skedaddle.
No, go ahead.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So this one almost got on my top 5. Gotham by Gaslight.
That's on my. That was almost on mine too.
I didn't mention New Front because we just talked about it essentially, but obviously that's there too. Ian will appreciate this one. Phoenix: The Untold Story.
Yes, well done.
That's, in case people know, that's the Byrne Claremont version of the Dark Phoenix saga that almost was published before they decided to change the ending. What if issue 11? Myrtle will appreciate this. What if the original Marvel bullpen were the Fantastic Four, written and drawn by Jack Kirby? It's Kirby, Lee, Flo Steinberg, and Sol. I'm sorry, God, I should know his name. I'm failing terribly here. He was
Saul Brodsky?
No, he was Saul Brodsky. Yes, he was in charge of getting the books out. Saul Brodsky. Yes, that's shameful. I should have known that. So it's them as the Fantastic Four. It's just a hoot. I think this is one of the best issues of What If ever done, at least in the original volume. What If issue 13? What If Conan Walked the Earth Today by Roy Thomas and John Buscema.
Mm-hmm.
Enough said there. The last What If I'll mention, and this is done by Miller while he was in his Daredevil Prime, issue 35, What If Elektra Had Lived? That's a classic.
Yep.
I highly recommend that. And then a couple DC ones. Action Comics Annual 6, written and drawn by John Byrne. What if Superman existed in the time of the Revolutionary War?
Oh, wow.
And Jor-El was the king of Britain. Great.
I've never read that one.
And then my last pick, and Shane, this is very much for you as well. Batman Thrill Killer.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which is excellent.
That's two-part, right? And
yeah,
then they have a sequel to that too.
Yep. I just read the whole trade just this past week. So just quickly, it's the early 60s, so like that Kennedy era.
Yep.
And so, they kind of get the feel of that. It's Howard Chaykin. And the art is by, is it Dan Brereton?
Man.
Yeah, magnificent. So if you love your Batman Elseworlds, that's definitely one of the best Batman.
Yeah, I agree with
Elseworlds. I highly recommend that. So
that is a good one.
I'm sure I could think of a gajillion more, but those are the ones that came to mind over the past few days. Sorry, guys, I got to go on dog duty. So we'll talk in the very near future, guys. Have a good night. Take care.
You too. Good night.
Ciao.
All right, literal dog duty. All right, and I'll go ahead and read my alternates off real quick here. What If Volume 2, number 42 was one of the first comics and possibly even the first What If that I read. What if Spider-Man had kept his 6 arms? It is a ridiculous premise, And it's another one of those what ifs where everything goes right because something went wrong. He's a better Spider-Man because he has 6 arms and he still gets to essentially, you know, live his life. So that's one of the reasons why it made my list, mostly because it's one of my first ones that I've read. I also have, speaking of Spider-Man what ifs, What If Volume 2, number 31, which was what if Spider-Man had kept his cosmic powers? Um, that one also is interesting because he kind of goes astray a little bit, and at one point winds up giving Hobgoblin a copy of his own face. Like Hobgoblin suddenly has Peter Parker's face. It's weird. Yeah, that is incredibly strange. Venom in this what if version of reality decides that because Spider-Man is as powerful as he is, that he's not worth fighting, and decides to be a hero instead, and winds up fighting in his stead when Spider-Man decides to go off and retire. So it's a very silly, fun what if story. So it's on there. Better what if. What If Phoenix Had Not Died from Volume 1, number 27. Mary Jo Duffy and Jerry Bingham. Very well done story. Spoilers. Good things do not happen. Phoenix kind of goes explodey and bye-bye world, essentially. Over in the world of Elseworlds, Green Lantern Evil's Might. It's a Howard Chaykin and David Tishman tale with Kyle Rayner Green Lantern set in the 1800s of New York.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know if I read that one.
Very, very well done. I have all 3 issues. I actually bought them at the closing of the second location of Jim Hanley's universe before they moved to their JHU Comics location. They had that on their like 85% off table, and I got all 3 issues for like $4. It was really well worth it.
That's cool.
Yep. Marshall Rogers did the art on that, by the way.
Oh man.
Yeah. Very, very well done. Something I'm surprised Chris didn't mention in his honorable mentions, at least. What If Volume 2, number 105, first appearance of Spider-Girl.
I have that on mine.
Awesome. That was actually almost on my list, and I was waffling between putting that as my number 1 in the mail.
I had that one on my list and I took it off. Yeah, I kept going back and forth with that one.
Yeah, but it's an excellent, first appearance. And as I said before about Spider-Girl, one of the few series that remembers the 90s of Spider-Man actually exists. So I appreciated it for that.
Yep.
I have another stray issue of What If on here. Number 109 of Volume 2. What if Ben Grimm remained in Littleville? There was there was an issue of the Fantastic Four where the Fantastic Four are placed into this simulation of a reality, part by the Puppet Master and part by Doctor Doom. And in this version of the tale, Ben Grimm and Alicia, and I think Franklin, remain in the simulation while everybody else leaves. And it's a haunting tale at times as Ben goes through, kind of an identity crisis and winds up trying to get his sting powers back at one point. It's surprisingly well done. Bill Roseman was the writer on that, and Anthony Castrillo was the artist. I have Ruins by Warren Ellis.
Oh, that's a good one.
Spoilers. It's Marvel's. Only everything goes horribly, horribly wrong in the Marvel Universe. Yeah, there's nothing quite like watching Mystique have multiple personality disorder, and because of that, crashing a plane and dying. That's pure Warren Ellis for you right there. Marvel 1602 is
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, I've got that one on my list.
Neil Gaiman's wonderfully well done rendering of the Marvel Universe as if it was set in 1600s. Marvel 1985 is on my list as well. That's a Mark Miller tale when a man from our reality winds up in the comic book reality, and what happens after that. I have a book called Powerless on here as well. A reality where most of the superheroes that we know are without powers. and it was co-written by Matt Chernis and Peter Johnson, and penciled by Michael Gaydos.
Hmm.
And it's a beautifully rendered comic that most people have forgotten existed, and I had to mention it here. And I'll finish it out with Superboy number 60 through 65, as I mentioned earlier on in the episode. That wonderful hyper time adventure that Superboy went on shortly after the premise of hyper time was introduced.
Loved it, loved it, loved it.
Yep, I still think of the cover of the first issue of that arc with Superboy strapped onto the front of this giant bomb that blows him into hyper time.
Love it. Yep. And
All right.
I love the Batman the Robin Superboy that shows up in that as well. Kind of a combination of Robin and Superboy's outfits. It's hilarious.
Okay. I have Dark Knight Returns, Star Wars Infinities, where they told alternate versions of the movies. Kingdom Come, Gotham by Gaslight, the Red Rain trilogy, where Batman's a vampire. Flashpoint, I actually enjoyed that when it came out, mostly because it gave, for me, a very sappy letter to Bruce from Thomas. What If Spider-Girl number 105, which I had owned at one point, but at one time the money was too good and I sold it. And it's still up there pretty good. To a certain extent, all of Booster Gold's more recent series, because he's quantum leaping all over the DC universe with alternate realities and alternate things happening. Wrong Earth, Hero Squared, which is by Boom.
It's a Giffen thing, right?
Yep. Son of the Demon trilogy, which was an Elseworlds or kind of an alternate reality at one time, even though Damien's now around. Would you consider Watchmen alternate reality?
Not. I guess if you want to, I'd say it's more side reality than.
Okay.
It's its own thing, but DC's kind of incorporated it into metaverse now, so I think you're within your rights calling it.
Right.
Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, one shot.
Well done.
Justice League 3000, 3001, Heroes Reborn, which I actually enjoyed Fantastic Four and Iron Man of that, not the other two. Mutant X.
Yes.
Days of Future Past, Earth One, Rock of Ages, which is one of my all-time favorite Justice League stories. The Nail, Another Nail, Avengers Forever, X-Men Forever, Superman Batman Generations by Byrne, was it?
It was definitely Byrne.
JLA Earth 2, X-Men Forever, the Tangent Universe comics.
Also very good.
Yep.
And I think that's it. I kept scribbling around in circles here. Hyper Time Gold. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. And Murd, your alternates.
Okay. Well, my lists actually aren't as extensive as you guys are this time out, but a couple of issues of What If, Volume 2, that nearly made it into my top 5 at one point. Number 11, What If the Fantastic Four all had the same power?
Good one.
So, for stretchy people, for rocky people, etc. And it's all 4 stories written and penciled by Jim Valentino. I can remember getting that in a care package at Scout Summer Camp when I was a kid. The reassurance in me has stayed with me for the years. Another story that stayed with me since it was first released in '93, What If Volume 2, number 52, What If Doom became Sorcerer Supreme? Written by a young Dan Slott. And it's got a Twilight Zone-worthy twist ending that is absolutely chilling. Never forgotten how creeped out I was by that the first time I read it. Also from What If Volume 2, number 49, What If the Silver Surfer possessed the power of the Infinity Gauntlet?
Nice.
Written by Ron Mars. That commanded some heat on the back issue market for a little while. Also, something I don't know what it is about the number 34, but in both Volume 1 and Volume 2 of What If, number 34 was given over to gags and giggles. It was just like a collection of short one-page or even one-panel jokey What If stories. Yeah, just a lot of yucks for your buck in both of those issues. And let's see what else we got here. I have the Age of Apocalypse as an alternate from Marvel. I had the whole Squadron Supreme maxi series.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Taking place as it does in an alternate reality, or 712, I think. There's the War of the Worlds series, which ran in Amazing Adventures in the early 70s, introducing Killraven. Let's see. I have 1602 on my list also, and also The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe on the short-lived Marvel Alternaverse imprint. And I guess you could include just about anything, or the entirety of the dad-blamed new universe.
Yeah, I thought of that. I did think of that. I should have put that on my alternates. It was in my head.
And let's see, from DC, on the DC side of things, I have DC The New Frontier. I had Kingdom Come as an alternate. From the whole Elseworlds series of annuals that DC did in 1994, I have Detective Comics Annual, which introduces Leatherwing, the pirate Batman. I definitely have JLA The Nail and Another Nail. And also Superman and Batman Generations, 1, 2, and 3. All 3 versions of that. That was great fun.
Yes, it was.
We told what would have happened if Superman and Batman had both been introduced in 1938 and 39, respectively, and had aged in real time.
Yeah.
And sired generations of successors to their respective mantles. How the DC universe would have been different if that had been the way things had gone. I've got Superman War of the Worlds, which is more 1930s goodness. It's like the 30s version of Superman and Lois Lane. It's kind of derivative of the old Fleischer cartoons, going up against the H.G. Wells / Orson Welles Martian Invaders.
That was just a one-shot, wasn't it?
It was. It was written by
that was good.
Roy Thomas. Let's see. I've got Superman Speeding Bullets, which is on Ian's list. And also Batman in Darkest Night.
I forgot that one.
But instead of Superman as Batman, it was Batman as Green Lantern.
That's a good one.
I'd gotten a Green Lantern rig. That was written by Mike W. Barr, art by Jerry Bingham. And it also introduced, as Speeding Bullets gave us that creepy hybridized version of Luthor and Joker. This one gave us hybridized Sinestro Joker, as well as Catwoman Star Sapphire and Two-Face Evil Star.
That's a good one.
I think, if I'm being somewhat objective, Speeding Bullets was the better story, but In Darkest Night has a stronger nostalgic appeal for me because I was just then discovering my love of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern concept. I've got Superman True Grit, written by John Cleese, with an assist from Python scholar Kim Howard Johnson, and art by John Byrne, which is what if Superman had crashed into a sleepy little conformity-minded coastal English community, and how his life would have taken a different turn from there. A little bit of Cleesian absurdism there. I've got... I think I may have exhausted my list, but for one thing, a little bit of something from the age of of amalgam, that is, the Batman Captain America one-shot crossover by John Byrne.
Nice.
Set in the 1940s with 40s versions of the Joker and the Red Skull. It's very good, fun comics.
Very cool. Yep. You reminded me, Murd. I have 2 more. Supergirl Annual 1996. That's part of Legends of the Dead Earth. I remember picking that up back in the day and it being a pretty decent, Supergirl tale of trying to remember who Supergirl was years after there was no longer a Supergirl. And that was pretty well drafted for back in the day.
It would have been Peter David, right?
Yes, I believe so. Trying to find the actual credits for the issue, but
Is the cover image like a metallic Supergirl?
Yes,
made of metal, like etching the letter S into her own chest.
That is exactly what it is. Yes, you are 100% correct about that. Trying to find. Oh, here it is. I think it's actually on Comixology. Let me see if I can click on it here. Yep, it's actually written by Neil Barrett Jr. and a bunch of others, for that matter. I think you've got Neil Barrett Jr., Chuck Dixon, Barbara Kessel, and Carl Kessel, and Joe Lansdale all have stories within this. Yep. And pencils by Dick Giordano, Robert Teranishi, and Ron Wagner, and George Perez inks over Dick Giordano in this.
Wow.
Yeah. Talk about a random issue to have such excellent talent on it. And one more What If to bring up, the What If wedding album issue of when Scott and Jean got married. What If number 60 from volume 2 was written by Kurt Busiek with art by Ron Randall.
I had that one.
Yeah, I definitely had that one when I was growing up, and it just came to me now. 3 different stories in a What If wedding album style. One was what if Scott Summers and Jean Grey had married earlier. The other, what if Scott and Jean had never fallen in love at all. And then the last one, what if Phoenix had fallen for Wolverine.
And all 3 of them written by Music?
All 3 written by Busick and all
Wow.
penciled by the same fella too. So,
So
Go
many
Cool.
back issues out there
yep.
left
You-
to find.
Mm-hmm. All right, I call that a job well done.
Yeah.
Okay, and yep. Now that we're all said and done, remind folks one more time, Murd, who our sponsor is.
And our sponsor for this episode is the Collection Drawer Company, maker of those drawer boxes. You know them, you love them, you need them. Go to collectiondrawer.com and help them help you figure out how to make your collection more easily accessible and organizable today.
Help me help you. Help me help you. All right, well done. And once again, reminders out there: patreon.com/comicgeekspeak if you'd like to give directly to the show, and patreon.com/comictiming if you'd like to put forward some further dough for the producing of said episodes and any of my future endeavors. Either way, you guys are awesome, and we thank you so much for your support. Even if it's just spreading the word, you guys are great. Amen to that. And Shane, once I
And how?
all right. Oh, and for that matter, even though it's now the 13th as we record this, Murd, happy belated birthday.
Thank you, Ian.
Yes, happy
Wish
birthday.
you the same in a couple of weeks.
Amen to that.
Oh, and happy belated birthday to Chris, too, in absentia.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Very
true.
Mm-hmm. All right, Shane, I am ready for you. Let's go ahead and make this happen.
All right. Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Let us know what your top 5 what ifs and Elseworlds are. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks to everyone who does contribute to the episode. We really do appreciate it. Keep the Muddle the Merds coming. We will feature them in future episodes. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.